Move for approval of the agenda.
I would like to have Ellen move, but what we'd like to do to accommodate some scheduling for the operations division, Bridge Yard item is move it up to the top
Above acquisition?
above acquisitions.
Okay.
If
There's
that's,
no objection
is that
to
all right with everybody? Is that okay with you?
There's a scheduling issue, and that will help if
No,
we do
because
that.
people may be coming.
And nobody
Okay.
on staff objected.
And-
Okay.
Yeah, and I,
As amended, I'll move.
a second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Public comments, I believe we have 2 public comments. Who's the first?
Norm LaForce.
Okay, Norman?
You have
Welcome.
3 minutes, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, Norman LaForce, here on behalf of the Sierra Club. Just 2 quick things in public comment. First, I wanted everybody in the Park District to know that for our annual Broward dinner, you may already know this, but we are honoring Judge John Sutter as a trailblazer for all his work on parks and open space over the years. It even predated his work on the Park District Board. So I would hope everybody comes to the Broward dinner and has a good time with us. The second thing is that I had sent an email about this letter. The Sierra Club wholly supports and would like to see as soon as possible the board take up the matter of changing the name of Redwood Regional Park to the Aurelio Reinhardt Redwood Regional Park. She was one of the original members of the park board and was very active in saving the redwoods in the East Bay and on park issues, and also was on the actual board of directors of the Sierra Club for a time period. So she's definitely a person who's been overlooked, and like the New York Times now, if you read it, they have a little section about people who've been overlooked in the obituaries, and have a lot of very famous women there that were overlooked over the years. And maybe she won't rank up there with the New York Times, but she should rank up with us here in the East Bay. Thank you.
On behalf of women, I say thank you, Norman, for noticing that for us.
Our next speaker is Chris Newey.
Chris? Welcome.
Board of Directors, Chris Newey, President of ASME Local 2428. I won't be here for the agenda item that I want to speak on, so I'm going to kind of speak on it now. The item is the Bridge Yard, the concessionaire contract at the Bridge Yard. I think you all know ASME's position on this item. We feel that this is contracting out our work. We know management's position, and I guess we'll find out your position later on today. But I'm mainly here to speak on kind of a broader issue, and that's support for organized labor. This board passed a resolution after Janus versus ASME earlier this year that said the East Bay Regional Park District supports organized labor, our right to unionize, our fight for fair wages and benefits, working conditions, safe working conditions. But there's several things that have come up that we're really starting to feel like maybe this, maybe the board's support of organized labor isn't as solid as we thought. For one, back in 2017, when we were in negotiations, I stood in front of you on this podium and explained to you that this was before we hit impasse, that at the district's offer, we were still going to be far behind once, even with the $1 million of equity adjustments. within the next month, the compensation report will be released, and it's going to show that I was right. We're still very far behind in wages. And in many points, we're at the bottom. The district is, in many of the benchmarks, district employees are at the very bottom to our comparable agencies. We felt like we didn't get the support from the board then, but we'll see what happens in the future. The other issue is this, the contracting of our work. I understand that, for temporary needs and for scope that's beyond what we normally do, that the district will contract out to outside agencies, outside companies. But this is our work. This is what we do, and it's being contracted out. And the last thing that I want to bring up is the union's starting to see what we would consider as retaliation for union organizers. We're seeing unfair treatment for union leadership, that there's a certain amount of scrutiny that's being put on our leadership that aren't being put on the rest of the workforce. And we have ways to resolve that. It's illegal. We could go through arbitration, go to the courts, but I'm here to talk to you because you're the board, and from many of you, you have said that you support organized labor. And like I said before, we're not really seeing it. So thank you for your time.
Okay, president's privilege, which I don't do very often, but there's a special thing happening now at the Park District. Eric, do you want to speak on this, or shall we give it to the lady not in green? Please come up. And this is celebrating 85 years of regional parks with something special.
Yes. Hello, Board of Directors. My name is Lisa Baldinger, Legislative Assistant here at the Park District, and Government Affairs Department is excited to announce that our new Community Engagement Survey launched yesterday. It can be found at eastbaysurvey.com. Bookmarks can be found both by the agendas and by the sign-in sheet at the entrance. This survey is being offered in 4 languages, in English, Spanish, Korean, and Chinese. And we look forward to receiving feedback from our public on our parks and trails.
And tell them what they get if they do it.
If you complete the full survey, we are offering, on behalf of the Regional Park Foundation, is offering 1 month of free membership with purchase of an annual membership for completing the survey.
Okay, all you got to do is do the survey, and you can go out and enjoy the park for a month and show what a good thing it is to do. So thank you very much. And if you have an idea of where they could place bookmarks that would help, I've suggested libraries, other places, feel free to call. Okay, thank you. And now we'll go to the consent calendar. And I believe the first item that someone had a question or commented on was D on AA. Comment or a question? This was on the checks, district checks.
Oh, all those questions have been answered, sorry.
That was
Yeah.
answered,
Yes.
okay.
Thank you.
Then the next item I have is item Q, Director Corbett. That's been answered? Oh, it was O. Oh, why do I keep saying Q? Who knows? Anyway, O.
If you can pass me just for a moment, I'll check my email and see if,
And Director
Okay.
Corbett, just to pique your memory, it was related to the Tidewater project, and you had
oh,
some questions
yes,
about.
The
I
date.
know, but someone told me they forwarded an email to me
Okay.
just recently.
But we're
I'll
we're
tell you.
happy to
While I was in the
answer
meeting.
that here,
Sure.
if you want. So,
Yeah, so I'll just ask the question.
Okay.
So, as we know, there's been some great work down at Tidewater going on over the last few years, and we have expanded the amount of property that's available for us for parkland. And I was just hoping we could get a little report on what these additional projects and necessary changes are within the contract. I understand some of it has to do with dealing with sea level rise, and also dealing with making sure that there is an appropriate transportation circulation during the time the construction is ongoing, and I think it's important to talk about that at the meeting because, as you know, we have some very active users at Tidewater, and I would like to make sure that that information is available and somewhere they can find it.
We have someone ready to do it.
Good afternoon, directors. Lisa Gorgon, Chief of Design and Construction. Yeah, thank you for the question. The item before you this afternoon is to increase the consultant service fees to address the information that we got earlier this year, which was in order to address sea level rise, we need to bring in fill, and takes about a year for the new dirt to come in to raise the elevation to settle. So what we've learned is that we want to break our project into 2 sets of construction plans. We're at about 50% right now, and the information we got gave us information about how high we needed to raise the elevation, and that in order to do that, really we need to wait a year between bringing in the fill and then proceeding with construction of the new amenities. We also learned that it was really important to keep the Tidewater Boating Center and the dock open during construction, and so that wasn't something that was previously contemplated when we were just looking at developing the site all at once before raising the elevation for sea level rise. And so that's some of the design work that also needs to be incorporated, is taking our existing parking and keeping it intact during the first phase, but then reconfiguring it and sort of with the sequencing of the second phase of development.
I'm assuming that you probably had conversations with the Oakland Strokes and others who are down there that use that property?
Yeah, we've been working with park operations and interpretive and recreation as well.
Okay, so those users are fully informed as to the fact that the project is being delayed a bit and that there's work being done to ensure that they can still have full use of the property they use.
Yes, we have. We've been working with them. We also, just recognizing that we're about 50, 60% into our construction documents. And so as we continue to learn more, we'll be reporting out. So, but we've been updating them on the project schedule.
Okay, thank you very much. Very much appreciate that.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
I think it might be good, Lisa, if you just do a short write-up for everyone. Sure. What you just gave us, and then we'll have it in place. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
And Madam President, I think this is very timely from standpoint of the discussion. We know that as we move forward on any shoreline project now, we're going to have additional design issues as this science evolves on the elevations and what's going to be regulatorily required. So we know those costs are going to go up too. So just a warning that what our plans may take longer because we're going to have to spend more money on things like elevation and how we treat the edge of that shoreline. So it's just going to be another complication we're faced with.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Next item is PD.
Yes, this is in regard to Point Isabel, and the contract is an agreement to manage the stormwater, and I'm more interested about what is the actual fix to the problem.
Matt Kroll, Chief of Stewardship. I think what's going to need to happen to improve for the long-term controls is the liner that was placed during the remediation did not extend all the way from the edge of the cap to the edge of the shoreline in some areas. So some areas it did not extend under the trail. So currently that area is paved over and covered, but we were going to need to remove some of that area and then put in a new liner in those areas underneath that and reestablish the ditches around the capped area. So we're working on a design for that now. We expect to have that design completed by the end of early next year, and depending on the funding availability, we'd likely go to construction at some point after that.
So a follow-up question to that would be like, as here we have Point Isabel, and we're going to be taking over other lands rather shortly, Concord Naval Weapons Station, George John Sutter Regional Shoreline, and Alameda Naval Air Station. When we come up on these situations where there's an exposed hazard who's ultimately responsible? Is it the Park District?
That's a big question. District Council, Carol Victor. We really work hard pre-acquisition to ensure that the Park District is not accepting liability for these historic contaminations. So the polluter is the party that ultimately should be responsible. With respect to this Point Isabel, it was part of a much larger land acquisition, very tough negotiations, and so it's unlikely in this case that we can pursue the polluter based on some of the purchase documents, but we are working with the state and under both state law and our operating agreement with the state of California. They're supposed to be responsible for historic contamination in East Shore State Park.
The next item, 2 directors have requests, and that's on S. Director Lane would like to see the map larger up here if that's available. And then D has a question. So do we have someone who can get us a map?
Madam President, we also
There it
have,
is.
Madam
Still
President, we also have a speaker, a public speaker on this item.
Okay, thank you.
I was wondering which color was the fuel break?
Who's going to explain the
I
map
had a
for us?
little
How's that?
Problem.
Who's the lucky person?
figure-
Our chief
figuring
is
it
going
out.
to come up and explain it. Of course she will.
It's, and you might make a few comments on this kind of unusual project.
Good afternoon, Board of Directors, Fire Chief Eileen Tiley, and I'm trying to figure out whether I need my glasses or not.
We will let you make the choice.
So there's a pointer here, and that might help me.
It's a very odd map, honestly, to try to
Oh,
understand.
this is the pointer. Got it. Okay. It is a very odd map, and it's not generated by us.
I'm glad you said that for full disclosure.
I'm pressing the little button. There we go. Okay. So if you can see right where I'm pointing here, it goes, it starts, one end of it is up here at Tilden and Inspiration Point, kind of where East Bay Mud property comes up and hits our big staging area at Inspiration Point. And then it comes down basically across the corridor just to the, I'm trying to use visuals here for you to help because the map's not very good, but it'll come down across the front of, on the north side of Highway 24, come across those hills, and then it will end up at Lafayette Ridge, which is, I'm trying to get my, right over here, I think. I actually have to get closer up to the map to help you. I don't think I'm doing a very good job here, but that's kind of where it ends. So if you've ever gotten off Pleasant Hill Road and Highway 24, where Lafayette Ridge comes down and we have the staging area, that's a portion of it that's ours. And then it goes across and moves west over across Moraga, Orinda, and East Bay Mud kind of intermixed. And there are some private landowners in there that Moraga, Orinda will be working with. Comes over across into East Bay Mud again, where San Pablo Dam Road is, and then it comes all the way up and hits Tilden right at Inspiration Point. Does that help?
So it's generally orange.
Generally orange.
Well, would it be reasonable for the future for us to get a map done by us that shows this for everybody?
We can do that.
I think it would just be helpful so everybody knows and kind of follow what you're doing.
That sounds good. This map was actually put together between CAL FIRE and
I'm sure
Moraga, Orinda.
they knew the project quite well, but it's sort of new to us, so I think that would be helpful. Dee, you had some questions?
3. In this agreement, will there need to be any more EIR or CEQA requirement work to be done before we to do this work?
Not for us. So the area in Tilden that's on our property is already covered by the Wildfire Hazard Reduction and Resource Management Plan, so we have environmental clearance there. And with regard to the area over at Lafayette Ridge, that's an area that's actually already being maintained by park staff. So it's routine maintenance, and any areas where there might be species of concern are going to be avoided.
Is East Bay Mud included in the agreement?
So, to be clear, East Bay Mud will have their own agreement with Moraga Orinda, as we will have our own agreement with Moraga Orinda. But as far as being cooperators in the project, yes, it's the three of us. So East Bay Regional Park District, East Bay Mud, and then Moraga Orinda. Correct.
Wondering about our capacity. Is this going to stretch our capacity to, are we going to be able to do this work?
We'll get the work done. One of the things that we have inquired with Moraga Orinda is that we get money for an acting fuels reduction coordinator, because our staff is currently busy with the plan that we have to complete work in 2019.
And
Dee?
Dee, appreciate that question, because specifically, you did your approvals for the work plan for our own staff, and this was added in by a governor's mandate after that, and we're very supportive of that, but we've had to rejigger things. I also just want to compliment the chief. She's really been trying to educate some of our partners here of the challenges we have had on getting permits. And it just does not waive, the emergency declaration does not waive everything. I have been told by CAL FIRE that they are actually having people in their own agency work with Fish and Wildlife, State Fish and Wildlife, to get some of the work done on habitat. But it's still going to be a challenge. And we know that some of the communities are really all for this until the details come out. And then there's concerns about, did you do this, did you do that, what's going to be cut? But I think overall it's a great opportunity to work with CAL FIRE and the state and the agencies to get this done.
Okay, any other questions? Dennis?
Yeah, Chief. So as I understand, Governor Newsom's group identified 35 areas that were critical needed fire management, pre-mitigation, and Orinda Moraga was like number 7 or something like that. My question is, are there any other, of the 35, do any of those other projects align or impact the Park District?
No, the other closest one, in fact, is Highway 17.
Oh, great.
So,
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, and I believe there is a public speaker.
Yes, Madam President, that is Norm LaForce.
Mr. LaForce?
So me again. I came on this particular topic because a number of us have been following this issue over the years with Sierra Club, California Native Plant Society, Golden Gate Audubon Society, SPRALDF, and Claremont Canyon Preserve. Actually met with Dennis Ryan last week and a number of the scientific staff that he had to go over specifically as best he could what was going to be done. While I can't say for the organizations our positions on this, I can say personally that we found conceptually it was a very good proposal as what was discussed with us. It's still in its formative stages as to what was to be done. The basic concept apparently is to create a shaded oak woodland habitat, which follows pretty much what we put together in our video some years ago called Bring Back the Oaks, which talked about how to make the best way to protect or prevent at least or reduce the risk of fire. So it looks like it's a promising approach. There was concern we expressed that this seemed to be what my concern was after the 1991 fire, which was that everybody runs around like chickens with their heads cut off because we got to do something without really thinking through the consequences. One of the big problems we did express to him is that there needs to be, of course, constant in perpetuity maintenance, and that costs money. Even he admitted there's really not a good answer to that. They're proposing to do a certain amount of prescribed burns. We expressed our concerns that the Air Board has proven very difficult in allowing prescribed burns. There's supposed to be some discussion about whether the Air Board's going to relent a little bit on that, but we don't know. The other thing we expressed to him is that people need to know this is not the prevention of fire, it's not the prevention of the risk. This is simply reducing the risk, and that there's a lot that people have to do for their own homes, hardening their homes, that's absolutely vital if you're going to protect your home and reduce the risk. And one of the things that I think is important to point out is that I think it needs to get out to the public that no matter what you do, you can have a firestorm. The Paradise Fire, I don't know how many people realize this, but the Paradise Fire firestorm tornado was equal to the firestorm that occurred with the firebombing of Hamburg, Germany. And Hamburg was actually bigger, greater, and worse than Dresden, but Dresden gets all the attention. The fire column went up approximately, if I am remembering correctly, something like 1,500 to 2,000 feet in the air as a firestorm tornado over Hamburg in 1943. So that's what can happen. But that's the worst case, hopefully. Thank you.
Let's don't go for the worst case, Norman, but it probably doesn't hurt to hear about it occasionally. Anything further on that item? Okay, thanks for the update on it, and I think it's great that we're going to get a coordinator. It sounds like it's absolutely necessary to make it work. Okay, the next item that I had a question on, let me see if I can find it, was T, D?
Yes. My question was that there's been recent research that seems to point to, with evidence that the Clapper rail does particularly well in a Spartina environment. And I was wondering how this is going to affect current methodology in removing Spartina, and also are there any other non-toxic methods of removal that are being explored?
I'm Matt Grawl, Chief of Stewardship. To the first question, yeah, we're also very concerned about potential impacts to Clapper rail based on, from the treatment program that could occur. So the current biological opinion does not allow treatment in areas where there are large populations of Clapper rail. So right now, Arrowhead Marsh, the one half of that area that's never been treated is off limits right now. Same thing with the new marsh and a portion of Cogswell where we have the best Clapper rail populations. And so the area, and this money would be used to treat areas that have already been treated where it's already been eradicated for the most part, and we're trying to maintain those areas from reinvading. And so we're really treating, for the most part, outside of their habitat with these funds. Regarding alternative methods, there was extensive looking at that when this program was started, and I think the problem with this is where this plant grows. We don't have the mechanical abilities to remove it. If we do, we'd remove the entire marsh. I mean, you can't go and cut it out or dig it out. You're removing the rest of the vegetation. So that's why they really try to use a selective herbicide that will treat the cordgrass but not affect the marsh gum plant or the salt grass and other marsh plants that are there, so we don't affect the structure of the existing marsh. And so I'm not familiar with any, and where we're seeing it in these complex environments, I'm not familiar with an alternative that would work.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Yes. Director Corbett.
Matt, may I ask you another question? How does Spartina spread? Is it seed? Is it stolen? Is it?
Through seed and through, it can grow rhizominously from the plant itself. But it also grows, and the way it's spread throughout the bay is mainly by seed transport with tides.
Okay. I asked that question because, selective removal at certain times of the year, of course, will stop the seed, but if you've cut the roots too, that's a tough one. But anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay,
And,
thank you.
Director Corbett, that if you fly over an area that has the Spartina in it, it's in circles about the arc of this area. They're very distinct. They look like an island, and so from that standpoint, they're easy to identify and treat from the standpoint of seeing them. But they're in the mud. They're fairly deep roots in the mud, and so it's just very hard you can't dig it out. But it is a very adaptive plant. We, in fact, it was our stewardship that raised issues about the now Ridgeway rail and the potential impact, because we were seeing a dramatic drop in the population at Arrowhead Marsh because of our probably 25 years of studies out there, and we're going, what caused that? And so we have been very concerned about it. So over a lot of negotiations through Matt and staff, we tried to work it out between Fish and Wildlife and the proponents of eliminating it. And you have to understand that some of the key staff through the Coastal Conservancy have been working on this for 20 years, and they've got some places where it's almost gone. after 20 years, and they don't want it to come back. So there really was pretty intense negotiations over that, because they said, look, you're going to ruin, $1 million of effort to get rid of it because you don't want us to treat it anymore. So I think we've reached a pretty good middle ground on saying we're going to continue to push back where we've almost got it gone, but we're still going to protect. It's going to be based on the populations of Ridgeway Rail. It's hard to say. And we do match that too. Yeah, thank you. Clapper Rail's much easier. Yeah, those Audubon people.
Yeah, and it's very complex, the requirements in the biological opinion for monitoring the population and when these areas could be treated. We have talked about, it's been a while since we've done a presentation on the Agricultural Resources Committee about the overall project, and so I know it's been suggested, and later this year, we will do a more detailed presentation to the committee on the overall program and then some of the challenges with these restrictions.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on that? Then we will go on to you, Director Rosario.
Yes, there was mention of, I'm totally in favor of the grant. I'm just curious if the, Dr. Johnson's research that was mentioned, is that available on the district website or to the public in general?
Not yet to the public in general. A lot of the research, though, is available to staff. We have been meeting with them regularly. And we do get reports from him annually, and so those things are what they're doing now is available. Once they have published results, that was what we will put out to the public. Right now, the studies they're doing aren't really publicly reviewable because they haven't gotten to the level of publication and analyzing the data where it's presentable. But we're looking with them at the raw data and helping them to focus their investigation and then ways to do more work that helps benefit our restoration and bullfrog eradication program. So again, this grant is something we were already wanting to do with them, and then the Fish and Wildlife Service approached us and we said, well, this is a great opportunity. We can use this to pass through and extend work we're already doing. We have approached Dr. Johnson about coming to a stewardship seminar, and he's interested. It's just a question of working out the timing and logistics with his schedule and being out of state.
And we've had this issue before where we've wanted to bring forward something that we know about, but usually we get it in advance of peer review, and the last thing that any scientific journal publication wants to do is to put something out and then find out there was a glitch in the research, and they're very embarrassed when that happens, obviously. So it usually is a pretty robust process of peer review, both from agencies and other scientists, so it just takes time.
But again, stewardship staff and park staff have met with the researchers and the various grad students that come out every summer, so we are continuing to work with them.
Okay. Item W, Director Corbett.
Thank you very much. I do have some questions about this item. First, let me say I am thrilled that out of the gate we are requesting funding under Prop 68 for the Tidewater area. It's a jewel of a park in an area that is impacted. A lot of industry in the area. In fact, it's an industrial reuse, and it provides a wonderful area for recreation in nearby neighborhoods that are, don't have as many parks as some of the other parts of Alameda County. So I'm thrilled about that. But what I did want to ask, and I do not remember whether Prop 68 funding, any of it is available for any type of programming or environmental education. Is this strictly infrastructure, the buildup of the park, et cetera? Are there any opportunities within 68 for that?
Thanks. Grants Manager Tiffany Margalisi. This Prop 68 opportunity we are applying for is for capital only, so it'd be for the capital improvements that our Chief of Design and Construction mentioned earlier. There is discussion within Prop 68 of allowing some portion of it to be used for programs, and that's still under discussion with the State Department of Finance and the legislature.
Okay.
So I think this is an important issue. So it was a very big push in Prop 68, particularly for accessibility to parks that don't currently have very good access. And the legislature was very supportive of putting specific funding for like bus programs, things like that. The finance department has pushed back really hard. They said that they are actually, I think, saying that that's not consistent with bond financing requirements. So there is a lot of discussion going on about that, but it was a pretty big, I can't remember the amount in 68. 5%, so it's a lot of 68. So that means that is not getting put out the door. But it's been one of the strongest pushbacks I've seen from the finance department in the legislature in a long time. So I think there may actually be something, and I haven't seen legislation that goes back and says, here's how we're going to handle that. But I think we're talking like $400 million that could be going out to communities for improving access to parks. So this is a pretty big deal, and I just wanted to raise that because it's something we need to pay attention to.
Yeah, like I said, I'm very thrilled that we're requesting this money for this particular park. It's in an area that really needs additional recreational opportunities, and, you know, as we move forward with this funding to improve that park, I hope we will continue to do the good work that we do to raise money through our foundation, et cetera, to allow for access to this park. I mean, just my own experience, I know when I drive my car there, I find this little jewel of a property right along the water, right up next to industrial areas and the freeway. And when I arrive there, I realize there's other people in the nearby neighborhood that might not have such easy access. So whatever we can continue to do to truly make that park accessible, I really appreciate our efforts, and you know, am supportive of that. So thank you very much. And again, it's nice that Tidewater is being chosen for one of the early projects. Thank you.
Director Rosario, I think you had a question or comment.
Mine was answered, actually.
Is it answered?
Yes.
Okay. Then that completes the consent calendar. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Motion made by Director Lang, second by Director Wasby. Any more questions or discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're finished the consent calendar. Considering how long it was, that's not bad. We have already changed the agenda order, and the next item is under operations. And this is the approval of a concession agreement with Oakland Venue Management for the operation of the Bridge Yard Building concession, Judge John Sutter Regional Shoreline. I really enjoy saying that. So.
I do
Okay.
also. Jim O'Connor, Assistant General Manager of Operations. Good afternoon, President Wieskamp, members of the board. I'm going to walk you through this item here.
Okay.
I'm doing a quick historical synopsis of where we've been and where we're going. As you know, the Judge John Sutter Regional Shoreline is a 45-acre new regional park that's going to be coming online fairly soon here. The Bridge Yard Building is a building that was built in 1938 as a repair facility for the interurban railway system that ran on the Bay Bridge. And this Bridge Yard Building will serve as one of the key elements, the critical elements in the new regional park. This has been a long time coming, decades long. Started in 1995 when the Oakland Army Base closed down. The district started working with the National Park Service on a public benefit conveyance process. 2010, the Gateway Park Working Group was formed, an outcome of the New Bay Bridge Development Project. That working group included 9 public agencies, including the Bay Area Toll Authority, BATA, the Park District, Caltrans, the Bay Conservation and Development Commission, BCDC, the California Transportation Commission, and City of Oakland, and several others. Also included several community organizations that were involved in that process. That group developed the Gateway Park Concept Plan, and that was completed in 2012. I'm going to run through this fairly quickly, so hang in there with me. If you have a question, let me know. 2017, Caltrans and their funding partner, BATA, completed an $8 million renovation of the Bridge Yard Building, including seismic retrofitting and remediation for asbestos and lead paint. 2017, the Park District signed a lease, a master lease with Caltrans for that building, including the parking lot and the observation deck on the east side of the building. In 2018, the BATA board approved the concept plan and the related environmental impact report, the EIR. So those were all major milestones in the process to get us to today. And then looking towards the future, in 2020, we hope to have this whole regional park open for public use and really bring former director John Sutter's prophecy from 1967 to light, the new park online for public use, and that's where we hope to be shortly. This brings us to today. In June 2018, district staff completed a dual RFQ RFP process to select a concession operator for the Bridgeyard facility. In December of 2018, the Board Operations Committee approved that vendor selection as Oakland Venue Management, or OVM, as we refer to them. And I have Steve Snyder and Andrew Jones from OVM with me today, too, if you have some questions for them. In April, a couple of months ago, the full board approved OVM as the selected concession operator for the Bridgeyard, but at that time asked us to bring back the concession agreement for the review and approval of the full board, which we are going to do today. And for the sake of time, I'm going to not hit every item that's on your term sheet that was provided with the staff report. I'm going to hit some of the highlights that are based on the board comments from the April meeting, things that you had asked us about this agreement moving forward. So I'm going to hit those, highlight those terms, but of course, myself and District Council Carol Victor are here to answer any questions you may have about that agreement. So I'll hit the highlights, and if you have any other questions, stop me as we go along.
Okay, feel free to do that, board, just let me know.
Okay.
Thank you.
First item is the term of the agreement. We're looking at an initial term of 4 years, and at the district's sole discretion, two-year options to extend the contract beyond the 4 years. Each party may terminate the agreement with a 180-day written notice, and that'll allow for the transfer of any existing contracts for use of the facility. The district may also terminate the agreement for material default or failure to comply with the terms of the agreement. Okay, I'm going to move on. Purpose, the Bridgeyard building will be used for operation of a high-quality reservable facility. And to Director Waspy's question that he's asked on several occasions, we have added language in regards to the district's role in controlling the types of events that may occur at the facility, and the language is directly here. District retains the authority to deny an event if it is determined that it will have an adverse impact on public health, safety, and order, or may require public safety resources beyond those ordinarily required for similar-sized events. This will give us the ability to have a review if OVM feels like they have an event or somebody's approached them with an event that may not be appropriate for the use or in line with the district's mission and the use of this as a public park. So that gives us the ability to deny an event if it's inappropriate or beyond our resources. Fees and charges. 10% of gross receipts, which will be placed in a concession maintenance fund, and we've discussed concession maintenance funds in the past often with the board, and those are used solely for improvements to the Bridgeyard building, and that is part of our master lease agreement with Caltrans, that any revenues are put back into this facility. Okay, customer service and performance. We were also asked, I believe Director Corbett brought this up, do we have some performance measures under this agreement? We've worked with OVM. We've come up with a goal of 10,000 attendees to events at this facility in the first year. We're also asking for a customer service feedback survey to be provided to all event sponsors. Those will come directly back to the Park District for review. We're also going to ask for a monthly report on events describing the type, duration, attendance, figures, and any other issues and solutions to those issues. That'll be sent back to the Park District, to our business services manager. That can be reviewed. We're also requiring a monthly meeting. We do this often with all of our concessions, have a monthly meeting with the business services manager or their representative and the park supervisor for that, where the concession is located. We have a monthly meeting to address any issues that may be coming up, or also coordination of events in the park, also in coordination with the concession. So we have these monthly meetings to discuss what's happening with that concession. And Director Lane had also asked for an annual report out, and we'll do that, the Board Operations Committee, annually to get an update on what's happening with this facility, and we'll probably talk about what's happening at the park overall also. Maintenance. This was a big part of our discussion. What are the roles of Park District staff and the roles of the concession operator? This pretty much follows generally how we operate either district-owned or district-managed facilities. Most of our concessions are district-owned or district-managed under a lease from another agency or another entity. This is generally a joint process. So OVM will develop, and what we've asked to do at the front end of this, we're going to ask OVM to develop a routine and preventive maintenance plan for our review by the Park District. This will cover things like any routine maintenance activities. This is lubing equipment. This is changing filters in the HVAC system. Minor things like that that extend the service life of the building. OVM will be responsible for janitorial maintenance and routine corrective preventive maintenance within the leasehold area. That includes the building, the parking lot, and the observation deck area. It's within the leasehold area. Major failures of utilities or the building structure will be reported to the district, and a joint decision is made as to how to fund those repairs or how to complete them, whether with a contract entity or with in-house Park District staff, such as our massed employees. OVM acknowledges the Bridge Yard is a historic building, and any alteration must be pre-approved by Caltrans and probably the state architect because of its historic status. Capital maintenance activities will be the responsibility of the Park District in conjunction with BADA and Caltrans. That's part of our master lease agreement for the building. Okay, waste reduction. Dr. Waspy had asked about who's going to manage the solid waste in this facility. We're going to ask OVM to develop a solid waste management plan within 120 days, and we want that to be in line with our sustainability policy that the board has approved. I'll just go through this. Things like single-use plastics and food and beverage service, prohibit styrofoam products, requiring recyclables, waste stream, education of employees, and work with caterers to minimize food waste. Those are all things that come under our sustainability policy. And the participating staff and OVM will explore whether a green business certification for Alameda County is feasible. We're going to take a look at that within the first year, see if we can do that. Reservations was a discussion, a topic of discussion, and I'm just going to hit the highlights from the board staff report. Current practice is that all district concessionaires handle reservations for both space and events in their leasehold areas. That's the current practice. Event vetting, I might remind you that Andrew Jones made the statement at the last meeting that security starts with booking, meaning that if we're concerned about the types of events and the potential impact onto our facility, that starts with your engagement with the potential client. And that's a long-term process. You got to remember that most of these events will be akin not to just a simple space reservation like we do currently in our reservation system. This will be more akin to a special event process. We learned from our interplay with Play, the Play Shoe Company, when they did their fashion show. That was over 2 months of negotiating back and forth before we had an agreement on that event. And almost every event that's going to happen here at the Bridge Yard will be a similar process. There'll be a long-term vetting to determine exactly what they're asking for, what the costs are, whether it's appropriate. So event vetting is a key element of the reservation process, and OVM has staff that are specifically trained to take that aspect on. Another thing that OVM brings to the table as our concession operator, as a professional venue manager, is they have the expertise and the knowledge about the types of events that we feel are going to happen here, especially around theatrical or musical performance events. They have that expertise. They've been managing those types of events for years, and we're going to rely on them to make sure that when those events happen at this facility, it doesn't damage our facility, the historic facility, and that's super important to the process. Reservations unit capacity, as I just stated, most of these events, almost all of them, will be akin to a special use permit type process. Currently within the reservations group, you might recall in other venues, we've talked about the fact in the last 5 years, we've more than doubled the special events that we're processing in our reservations unit. That's a specific, that's quite a bit of capacity, and this will be, increasing that even further to manage those types of events. Contract performance. Another issue is that the vetting process that occurs is a critical element of the services that we're asking the concessionaire to provide. And it directly impacts the quality of the service and the goals we've asked them to meet under the contract terms. So that's another point of discussion around reservations. And this is the staff recommendation before you today. The general manager, the board operations committee, and the full board by unanimous vote at their April 16, 2019 meeting approved the selection of Oakland Venue Management as a future concession operator at Bridge Yard Building at the John Judge John Sutter Regional Shoreline. Staff is seeking approval of a concession agreement with OVM for an initial 4-year term with two 2-year options. And with that, myself and District Council Victor are available for questions.
Director Lane?
So I do have a quick comment. So when you were, and some other things, but you were talking about 2020 as opening for use of this park. So what exactly would be opened at that point?
Well, Director Lane, you know I'm an optimist.
Yes.
My hope is that the Pier project, the observation pier, at this point is intended by Caltrans to be completed sometime in mid-August. I would guess that's going to end up being sometime in September. The parking lot project is starting to get underway now, the new parking lot project. I'm going to guess that's not going to be completed until October, November. So we're in the process internally within the management team of both the Park District, BADA, and Caltrans determining what timeline would be appropriate for us to consider the park open. So we're working through that. We will report back out to the board when we have a specific date. But my guess is my best case scenario would be early in 2020 for a full opening of the park to public use.
And of course, the trail over the bridge is open right now.
That's correct. And the Bridgyard parking lot serves as the trailhead parking for that Bay Bridge Trail.
Yes, and so who is maintaining and managing that trail?
The trail is the responsibility of Caltrans, and CHP has the law enforcement authority.
Thank you.
Okay. Question? Excuse me, Director Coffey?
Thank you. For the benefit of my colleagues, you recall at the last meeting I raised some concerns about the outsourcing of reservations, and just wanted to let you know that Dr. Alvarez and Jim O'Connor spent a lot of time with me on the issue and going through the nuances of it, and I'm convinced that it is an appropriate component of the overall concession here in terms of the holistic approach that Jim described, and that his general description of the need to include the reservations component within the concession makes sense to me. I also was concerned about the termination ability of the district in the event the arrangement isn't working out for some reason, and I've worked with Carol Victor yesterday going back and forth over the termination provisions, and I am convinced that they have arrived at a satisfactory termination arrangement.
Well, coming from a lawyer, I expect you to have done your due diligence on that. Yes, Director Corbett.
And being the attorney sitting next to the attorney, with regard to the termination language, can we hear about what that is? I had some concerns too about the clarity of what breach and material breach is. I'm used to seeing very specific lists of breach terms that rise to the level of materiality, but I understand there may be something that has been discussed. I'd like to hear exactly what that is.
Sure, Director Corbett, Carol Victor, District Council. So there are specific default provisions. There's a list of what would be a default with cure periods, and then we could terminate for cause based on that list of default provisions. But we also have, and this is standard to all of our district concession agreements with, sometimes it's 180 days, in others it can be 365 days, but the district can terminate a concession if it decides it's no longer an appropriate use in a public park. Director Coffey was concerned about the need to make that finding, and so we're also adding that with 180 days notice, the district can terminate for convenience. And if there's early termination, and this is already in our concession agreement, any early termination, the concessionaire cannot seek any damages or remedies against the district for early termination.
Okay, thank you. And that's part of the miscellaneous standard terms at item 14. I just have to say this as an attorney. It is helpful sometimes to have whatever those standard terms are, because then I wouldn't ask that question, because I would read them and go, oh, there it is. So thank you. I do have a few other questions. With regard to the reservations, as we know, that has been a major matter of discussion. And I just want to ask this question very directly. I do also understand the unique nature of this facility, the types of, vendors and, operations and concerts or whatever else we may have at this facility. It's a little different than our other facilities. So I do understand the nature of the concern of having the vendor be able to control the reservations. But I would like to know, is there any determination whether we are displacing staff? Is there a number? I mean, I asked that question, based on comments that have been made. Is there, if it was in-house, are we displacing 1 or 2 people or a dozen people or that? So I think you know where I'm going with that.
Well, I'll let Jim answer that specifically, but I do want to make a comment on that. Our staff is very important to us, and what's always challenging when you're really focused on a specific issue is to forget the context. Our reservations and use are growing across the district. Those are coming in through one window. That's reservations. I am actually very concerned about the capacity of just existing growth absent of this on existing staff. So at some point you have to make a decision in the budget where we add that staff. So if we need to grow in reservations just to handle existing demand, which we all know everywhere in every park, there's been many, many articles now about how parks are being overcrowded. Just one this weekend on Yosemite buses that nobody wants to go on anymore because they're so overcrowded. So we know park use is in great demand now. So the longer they have to stay on the phone, the longer they have to negotiate something that's taking up more capacity, and I worry about that impact on the existing staff. So if we have somebody in a concession that really wants to handle that for their own negotiations, I compare this kind of reservation very different than a wedding or a campground reservation, because this is like fishing. You have your fish in the line, you're trying to reel in a big event, and you may be playing that line for a long time before you actually get them in the boat. That's very different than what we do now, but it takes a lot of time, and I think it's something we have to look at, absent of this issue, is to look at our own capacity of growth impacts on our staff in reservations. It's not a big unit. And so I think overall we're going to have to look and talk about that existing growth demand.
So, but I was just going to say, it sounds to me based upon what you have just said, adopting this agreement will not displace or create a scenario where we're laying off staff.
No, absolutely not. This facility is almost 4 times the size of our complete reservable facilities group now. It's actually an addition to facilities available through the district. So it's not displacing anybody. It's actually an addition on to existing facilities.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. And then we do have a few more questions. Under the insurance and indemnification clause, I also see that we have standard requirements and policy limits, but they're subject to the approval of the risk manager. Will that be something specific at the time this is entered into?
Correct. In, Director Corbett, Carol Victor, District Council. Yes, so the insurance provisions, the risk manager is already vested with some discretion regarding insurance limits, because sometimes it can be very expensive to meet the insurance requirements. So the risk manager will approve the limits, but again, it will be protective of the district. Also, keeping in mind with the risk is managed for a facility like this in many ways. So
yes.
Caltrans owns owns the building, they require us to have insurance. We'll continue to have insurance. The vendor will have insurance, but then they only retain concessionaires and not retain, they'll only retain businesses that also have insurance for their business operations, like the caterers, and if there's a bartender, that type of thing, they'll have liquor liability insurance. And then we also require the event sponsor to procure insurance. So there's many, many layers of insurance to manage the risk.
But there will be specific terms as to limits that are
Exactly.
agreed to upon the
Exactly.
execution of this agreement.
Yes, and then the indemnity the indemnity provision, and I can tell you that I spend a lot of time discussing this indemnity provision with concessionaires and others, and it's very, very broad and very protective of the district. And every attorney who looks at it on the other side tries to bring back the scope of the indemnity, and we really resist that, and we can't, and we hold firm because other concessionaires are agreeing to this indemnity provision, so we really hold the line on it.
Okay, thank you very much. And then I just have a couple more questions. One is with regard to the repairs and replacement of capital items, and I do understand that we sort of have an interesting partnership and relationship with Caltrans, et cetera, and others, and that we are responsible for any major capital improvements and have requirements vis-a-vis Caltrans. But what I'm wondering is if there is actual damage as a result of the leasing of the facility, you know, who knows what, an installation fails and breaks the windows, or, you know, there's a fire, whatever, something happens, right? Let's hope none of that happens. But who then is responsible for repair? Do we take that on ourselves, or is it, if it's as a result of renting the facility, that responsibility shifts?
So Director Corbett, the concessionaire would be liable vis-a-vis us, but we would also be looking at whoever put on this event, whoever installed the installation, we would all be looking to them for repairs. But the concessionaire would be responsible for damage caused as a result of events at the facility.
Okay, so there are terms within the contracts that are required by our property manager, or for lack of a better term, that will require that of the people who are renting the facilities. Okay.
And Director Corbett, from General Manager, I just want to say that if anybody damages those glass doors, it will be a big deal. The BATA and Caltrans fought over those glass doors for 2 years on the design to make them work. So they are sacred.
Okay, good to know. We would just assume they'll never be broken. So I have one last question, and this is regard to the waste reduction plan. In looking at what is printed at number 12 in the exhibit that you have prepared for us, I don't know how to say this nicely. I'm a little disappointed. I don't think it's as strong as it could be. It appears a little wishy-washy, and, well, if this works, and I'm sorry, I don't mean that derogatorily in any fashion, but I think we have a real opportunity with bringing this new facility online to require not just reducing single-use plastics, which I don't really know what that means since we haven't had a use there yet, technically, to maybe trying to go a little closer to zero waste, and or as close as possible. And I do know, because of my own experience with the Green Business Certification for Alameda County, it's not that difficult to meet. So I'm just hoping, and I know there's been a lot of discussion on this board too, other people are very interested in this, that we can make this a little bit stronger. I think we can do better, and I think that there are lots of places that impose conditions that are stronger than what we see here. So I would just hope that we might be able to work on that a little more.
Absolutely understand your comment. I think the balance we're trying to strike here is because the OVM is going to be working with many vendors as events move through the facility, we're just concerned about that, the challenge of working all those vendors and how that works under the Green Business Certification. So we're committed to seeking that if it's feasible and working with, in fact, I was trying to get on their website the other day, it wasn't working, but we'll work with the county staff to see if we can seek that certification. The other thing to just keep in mind, especially in this initial term, is we're really treading new ground here in terms of getting this facility up and running. I think this could be an iterative process, meaning get our feet on the ground here, get the park operating, start getting some throughput in the park, and then maybe in subsequent terms we can start to really tighten that down a little bit. But we're committed to looking at that green certification. Absolutely heard that from the board, and we're going to work on that diligently.
I do, again, nothing personal. I do think we can do better than what we have here in item 12. So
Director
thank you
Corbett,
very much for working on that.
From the general manager, I would like to take that a step further. I would like to see a specific report come back in the first operating year on this item very specifically. I think the district should exceed those standards.
Yes, absolutely.
We are very aware that we have a recycling crisis. Perhaps the district could make an effort in partnership with our concessionaire to look at what the opportunities are to do something more. I really think this is something that the district should make a priority of, and it may not fall to the burden of the concessionaire, but it's something that we should play a very key leadership role in. And I would like to talk to Jim and the concessionaires in this first year and come back to the board with that report and say, you know, let's do more. I really think this is an important thing for the Park District, and if we can figure that out here, no matter what the balance of economics are, it may be a precedent that we can take elsewhere. And I really do think, I mean, we are seeing every day the crisis on, you know, I don't know if the board saw the Malaysian government talking about people just shipping whole containers of recycled garbage and plastic to their country and dumping them there.
Right.
So what can we do to maybe be an example? But it may not be economically feasible to put that all on the burden of the concessionaire, and I am really open to negotiating that. I really think it's important for us.
And we'll also have, you know, many public events, you know, outside of the private events. So I think that's a real opportunity to look at those public events we have at the facility, as we're doing in many of the parks.
Yes, absolutely, and thank you, and kudos and congratulations for all of that. I've seen the additional bins at the events, so thank you.
Others? Comments, questions? Director Wasby?
Thank you. Yeah, I too was hoping that we could have had our employees staff this, but having spoken to members of the union and members of staff, I come to the conclusion that, like we've said before, the scale of this operation, I think, requires the vendor to control the reservations, and I say that sadly, but I think this is a good plan. And I will echo Director Corbett's comments. You know, I think, as the general manager said, I think we have a real opportunity here, and I'm not sure, and I don't want to put the group here on the spot, but I think, and we refer to using our sustainability policy. I think if we embrace the sustainability policy of the City of Oakland, I think that would be a much more beneficial for us. I mean, I think when we refer to banning or prohibiting styrofoam, I think that's a City of Oakland law, right? So that's an easy one. You know, and I'll echo Director Corbett's lines, reducing single-use plastics. You know, reducing is a word that, but you know, I'm encouraged. I look around here and I was trying to plan my day. There's nothing, look at, we're all using reusable. We used to have the cups that honored our 30th anniversary. For 50 years we've been using those darn cups and can't get rid of them, and although we tried our best to throw them in the garbage. I guess a question that would be a yes or no answer is, who pays for the solid waste collection?
It's part of the concession contract agreement.
So you guys.
For
pay
the facility, right. The rest of the park will be on the park district, but
Okay.
this facility
Well,
is.
I consider that a great incentive
Right.
to do the right thing. And also, I would just suggest that if, well, having been a member of the Alameda County Green Business Technical Advisory Committee, I know it's difficult to be a green business, but there's lots of benefits. And we were always, I was in a group that was charged with picking the amount of people we could certify every year. And Oakland and Berkeley, and especially food people, restaurants, inundated us. We couldn't produce enough certifications. So I think it's a benefit. I think that's something you can use as a business plan that will create people wanting to come to your facility, and I think it's not that hard. And I think just when the last sentence it says, or second to last sentence, due to the nature of event, multiple vendors and groups involved, the facility may not qualify. Well, you know, I think you have the ability to just say, if you're going to be a preferred caterer, you have to be a green business. And I don't think that's too hard to do. I don't know if we do that at the Brazil Room.
I don't believe any of those are required to be green business.
And then again, you know, it's all difficult, it's all hard, but if stopwaste.org provides all kinds of teaching assistance, and I think they specialize in event planning. They're very good at what they do. And so I totally support this plan. Hope we can make it a benefit for
But just a
recycling
clarification on the single-use plastics, I think the alternates were either using, reusable flatware dishes and glasses, or use compostable like we do in most of our events. So that was the intention behind that.
And Director Waspy, if I may, Carol Victor, District Council. When we were in discussions with OVM, so the caterers, that's probably the low-hanging fruit as far as they're concerned in terms of really having a robust food recycling program, that type of thing. It was the other vendors that they were concerned about. Unfortunately, there is a lot of packaging involved in event production, and so that was where we heard the hesitation from OVM about the green business certification, and that's why we want to look into it more.
All right, thank you.
Okay. I can't believe that Director is here, so I thought you might. I just thought you might.
Yeah, just like my fellow colleagues regarding the reservations, I just think the vetting process can be very prolonged, and I think it would be a burden to our staff. My biggest concern is that we're going to be bringing on a new campground very shortly, and I think the staff on the ground, the staff that we've allocated on the ground for both the campground and for Judge John Sutter Regional Shoreline isn't going to be adequate enough. I think this new park is going to be huge, and I hope we can work with the union in increasing the number of people that we're going to need there, because I see it as a very big park. So,
Director Rosario, just to be clear from your executive team, is that we acknowledge that up front. I think right now we see this as phased. I think the concessionaire sees their business as phased, but that includes the campground. Dumbarton is not going to be fully occupied or fully developed over a period of years, but I want to make on the record the commitment. As that use grows and the development of that park at Dumbarton grows, we are going to need to provide more district staff, and that needs to be our wheelhouse of rangers who do great work in managing parks. I don't consider our rangers janitors. I consider them professional park people who know how to do all aspects of parks. And so I think both Jim and myself and the team have really said we know, and we know as we develop Gateway or Judge John Sutter Shoreline Park, we are going to have to add. We're just not sure how fast that'll happen, but on the record, we know it has to happen. We just don't know when.
Okay, anything further? All right, Director Lane.
Yes, I am really excited about this building, going on online and being associated with us. And I read my Bay Area News May 30th, and I was kind of cruising down, looking at what was interesting. And here we had West Edge Opera in a new performance space at Oakland's Bridge Yard. Wow. Be still my heart. And so I took a look at these entries, and none of them give the address for the location, like Hearst Theater or Lesher. And likewise, we didn't have a Bridge Yard address here. And all of them have, in terms of detail, the website for the group that's performing. So it led me to wonder about website information about Bridge Yard. Is this out there? Is this available? Now, people who want to come to West Edge, they're going to Google Bridge Yard, Oakland. And do we have something for them to find?
We've been threading a needle here, Director Lane, in terms of the balance between, actually OVM has been very cooperative in working with us on the West Edge Opera event, because that started almost 3 months ago, our interactions with them. So they've been working very closely with us, even though we have not been under contract with them, and I do appreciate that. Since it'll be one of our first events when the facility is fully open to the public.
So I spotted one of the first events?
Yes, you did.
Yes.
And
okay.
I think they were trying to be careful, and maybe even Andrea wants to address this, but I think they were trying to be careful about not getting out ahead of the board on, getting through this process until we're official, and being careful not to get ahead of us on that issue.
Well, I'm comfortable with that. I want to see the facility be used. My question is, if somebody wants to get to Bridge Yard, where does it appear when they are looking for it? And how does it say how you get there? Because we all know that's a challenge.
So once we get everything, once we get through today's meeting, I'm very hopeful. We'll start to really work with public affairs to make sure our website has that, and then OVM's already developed a website for the facility and for their future business as a concession operator. One of the challenges going forward is President Wieskamp brought this up at the prior meeting, is access. How do you get there? Parking. All those things are going to be part of our discovery as we move forward with this location, and getting that down is what is the best access to the facility. I think we're going to handle all that pretty well in the first month or two as we get going here.
Yeah, well, I think for individuals going, they need that. Okay. And evidently they have it.
You have a map there? 210 Burma Road.
Yeah. Okay, so that is that's good. So, but my additional question on that is that we are. It appears as Bridge Yard in Oakland. So, is there anything that we would like to see in having it more closely identified as a regional park? So, if we were going to put something in there like that, do we say? No, in the paper, Bridge Yard in Oakland, or do we say an East Bay Regional Park District facility?
We've actually required in the agreement language, it requires that any marketing materials identify this as a facility of the East Bay Regional Park District. So that's required. Any of those marketing materials, website, it all has to identify us, including signage.
Okay, and then finally, I do want to say something a little odd, and that is, and we're talking about high-quality reservable facility and looking to have special events that are extraordinary and well regarded once they are put together. And we're looking to a partnership for some time. So I just finished my 60s exhibit in Danville, And we had a rock and roll revolution speaker last week, and the point made was that at the end of the 60s, in December 1969, there was a Rolling Stones concert at Altamont Speedway in Livermore, in which they paid Hells Angels $500 in beer to be their security.
I think we'll do a different level.
So.
And they've regretted that ever since.
So we are now 50 years past that, and we're looking forward to a very professional experience for you as our concessionaires.
Yeah, how not to
You
do
think?
it.
Yeah.
Point taken, Director Lane.
Was that a promise not to hire the Hells Angels? I believe that probably was.
Yeah, that might have been the first and
President
last
Wings,
security gig.
just a reminder that we have had a long, like probably when we first started negotiating with the Caltrans, a commitment from BATA to help with wayfinding from the highway system. That has not taken place, and part of that is with our decision on the naming of the park, you will see the brown signs that we put up in for the parks at some point. But that is a commitment from BATA and Caltrans to get those there, and that has not been worked out yet, but that they made that commitment, so it is going to happen. It's actually very difficult now without the signage to do that, and so we will do that.
I do have one comment on the signage. You know, because we have been very careful to say Judge John Sutter, Shoreline, and I think myself that we're going to need on signage to say Sutter Shoreline. And
Correct.
Because I like signs that are pretty simple with open space around them. And from my vantage point, I don't think those signs need to say Judge John. They need to say Sutter Shoreline Regional Park, just to make it, a little simpler. We had this discussion.
Whoa!
Well, there's Sutter, but Sutter Shoreline is pretty distinctive. We had this discussion with Kathy and Ted Radke, Martina Shoreline, and we're using Radke. So it's a precedent for us, and I really prefer the simpler sign. That's just my opinion.
I personally am not going to take on Judge John Sutter on that issue, but we can talk to him, I'm sure. I have addressed several times my fact, whether you call it wayfinding or how you get there, you got to have more than a trail of breadcrumbs. You've got to have something that is for an average, sensible. 2 times 2 people, park staff, have taken me to Treasure Island, which I love seeing, and we came back, and it doesn't take that long, but I think for the average person expecting to get to the facility, that might not be the best thing to do. So I think we need to get together and work out something sensible that Oakland agrees with, and that makes it easy for people, whether they're going for opera or something else.
Absolutely.
I don't know whether anybody else heard, but PBS the other day had a discussion about, and I think it's occurring back east, where they are looking at going back to manufacturers and everybody talking about more sustainable ways of selling products. It sounds to me like they're going back to milk bottles. They were talking about having actual stuff that you refill and redo in a local manner. The more we can get into that whole stream of making things, and if that includes having a lot of dishwashing machines so glass can be used on site and cleaned, that's fine. But I think we ought to do things like that or in the avant-garde as talking about green. I wish somebody could talk to cosmetic people and say they don't have to put 29 layers of plastic and stuff before they sell stuff, because I think it's totally wrong. What we can do about that, I don't know. I'm trying to imagine opera in this facility, and I trust the sound comes out better than I'm thinking it will. But maybe by then the sound will be better. I don't know.
This is their business. They came to us, so
They
I'm
seem to feel like
assuming they're
they'll
going
be
to work that
able
out.
to do it. A soprano will handle it, or an Alto or whatever. Anyway, I think it is an interesting agreement. I think this facility is going to be well utilized if we do it properly by a variety of customers. I do believe that we need to be sure that our staff that is working all around the facility is adequate. And I'm also concerned about policing. We have our police, and I believe the Highway Patrol takes care of the trail.
Correct.
I don't know what the City of Oakland Police do, but I would hope everybody is on board, and if we have to have special security guards, that's on, I assume, the concessionaires, if we feel that's necessary.
Right, they'll need to provide security for events, adequate security, correct.
Okay. So with that, I think it's an exciting opportunity for the district. I certainly support it. I think together we'll come up with something that's interesting and that will be a successful park, that a lot of people will come from San Francisco to see it. And so I agree with Beverly, not on what name you put on the sign, but on the fact that East Bay Regional Park District should be part of it. I'll let somebody else handle that. So with that, unless anybody else has a comment, I am open for a motion of approval.
Madam President,
Yes.
we do have one speaker.
Oh, we have one public speaker. My apologies. Public speaker.
Kimberly.
Excuse me.
Thank you, President Wieskamp, members of the board, and General Manager Robert Doyle. I am here today to speak on behalf of AFSCME Local 2428. I'm the Chief Steward of 2428, and my name is Kimberly Anderson. I just wanted to speak to a couple of the comments that have been made today. Actually, AFSCME 2428 agrees with the district's position about reservations, and we agree that it's not displacing staff to have OVM do the reservations. We, after doing more research into the process, do agree that it's more akin to the special event permit process, which is right now handled only by the reservation supervisor, and there is a lot of special event permits that we're processing, so we don't think that's feasible for staff to be doing in-house. Our main concern is with the janitorial and the maintenance work, and that's what we've been bringing up since the beginning. We do have facilities staff right now. We have building and grounds aides that do that work at our other rental facilities, and we think it is feasible for them to do that work at Bridgyard as well. That said, our president spoke earlier today about the resolution that the board passed in December of last year, stating that the Park District would support labor and organized labor. Our one concern with these terms that are listed in the board packet is that there is no mention of that. So if you are going to agree to contract our work, we would ask that there's something in the contract that says that the workers will be paid prevailing rates, that they will have benefits. And the default provisions that were mentioned earlier, the list of default provisions, are also not in the contract, and what we're seeing seems like partial information. The board requested the full agreement, and all we have is a term sheet that refers to things that are not included in there. That is all I have to say on this. Thank you.
One thing I will respond to is that the OVM is a City of Oakland licensed business, and as a business licensed in the City of Oakland, they have to comply with the city's living wage
Okay.
rules, and which is a guaranteed minimum wage and has some other factors to it.
And there's no reason why we can't include that fact with our agreement.
Well, they'll be licensed through the City of Oakland, so that'll be a requirement of that business license.
Okay.
Why can't we add it if it's part of the deal anyway?
I don't think it's an issue adding compliance with Oakland's living wage
I think
ordinance.
that's fine. The agreement
Or-
of all.
Yes, I see them nodding
It's a
in the
fact.
background. Yes, that's, their subject, there's, again, a standard provision. I think in terms of, we've had standard concession agreements for the last 20 years, and that's why not everything's spelled out, because they are fairly standard. But with one of the standard provisions is that they have to comply with all local, state, and federal laws. And we will specifically spell out the
I
Oakland
think that
prevailing
makes
wage
sense.
law.
Okay, is that agreeable to everyone? Okay, that sounds fine. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, at last, I am open for a motion and a second.
President Wiskamp, before we do this, I think after 6 months of discussion and negotiations, I would certainly like to invite our
I will be glad
concessionaire
to
up,
invite
see if
them.
they
I
have
just
any
ma-
comments.
I just was made aware that they have another place to be shortly,
Okay,
but I
well,
will
we
be
are trying
glad
to
to give them an
move that
opportunity.
forward. But I just, on behalf of staff, thanks for hanging in. I think as much as we really dug down in the details and the issues, I think you can feel here from the board, this is a very exciting opportunity. It is a unique opportunity. And I think we wish you and the district great success, and I'm very confident in that, especially after putting you through the, as our eminent Sierra Club member would say, the wood chipper. You've been put through the wood chipper, and I want to thank staff for doing that, and the board for digging into these issues to the point where everyone feels comfortable, and I really, really thank you.
Okay? Thank you. All right, thank you. We agree. Now I'll try again. Do I have a motion? A motion by Rosario, second by Lane. Any further discussion?
The only last thing I would say is Google West Edge Opera, and you will see a beautiful, several beautiful photos of the facility, a whole layout of the history of the building, and a nice big giant map. Doesn't say the park name on it yet, though. But it's great.
Devil's
Look
in
it
the
up.
details.
It's very nice publicity for us. We might just ask them to put the name of the park on the map. It does have McLaughlin East Shore State Seashore, so that's a little off.
Oh,
but-
my goodness.
We won't show
But,
John Sutter that.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
no.
But that's easily added.
And Director Corbett, I understand that you had something to do with bringing them in?
Yes.
Well, that's great. This
I'll
is
leave
a
it at
great
that.
start.
And
Great
I've
start.
heard they're very happy so far with the people they're working with, by the way. Yeah.
Okay. Here I am again. Are we ready for a vote? We had a second. Further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations to all of us. I think they have another appointment in San Francisco, and so they are very pleased to be done. But we'll expect, whenever you care to, inform us how things are going, pictures, whatever, let us know.
We're going to have a great website for you. It's going
Okay.
to take a couple weeks, but we'll send it out to you. Thanks so much.
And I will be very curious about how everybody gets there and the success with that. Yes, let's have a break.
press. Huh?
I think we have the board corral, so I'll reopen the meeting with everybody. We're going back to Acquisition Stewardship and Development Division. First item is the authorization to enter into an option purchase and sale agreement and transfer in appropriate funds for the acquisition of 7.80 plus or minus acres of real property from Bonnie J. Simon. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam President, members of the board. Mike Reeves, Chief of Land Acquisition. So the Simon property is located adjacent to Las Trampas Wilderness Regional Preserve on the northwestern portion of that park. For orientation, Bollinger Canyon Road goes along here, and the property is located off of Bollinger Canyon on Valley Hill Drive. This is just outside the boundary of the town of Moraga, which is on to the west. So this is an unincorporated portion of the county. The Simon property, 7.8 acre Simon property is outlined there in orange. Again, Valley Hill Drive here. This is Bollinger Canyon Road. This is a hillside property. It's undeveloped with a suitable home site located at its highest point, and that's in the clearing here on the southern part of the property. This home site location is also highly visible from within the park. Seasonal drainage runs along the northern and western boundary of the property here. And this is a riparian zone that has habitat value and also serves as a wildlife corridor. And located adjacent to the Simon property is the former Lothamer property purchased by the Park District in 2015. We purchased that as a future potential site for developing a staging area to open this area to the park to public recreational trail use, and that is this area here. You can just make out through the green overlay, this is the former Lothamer residence there. This is the driveway entrance into that property. One thing to note is that although the Simon property does touch on Valley Hill Drive here, this is really not a feasible, from a topographic standpoint, a really feasible access route. So back when this area of Hunsaker Canyon was subdivided, a access easement was included with the Simon property, pertinent to the Simon property, and that easement travels from Valley Hill Drive along the driveway that enters into Lothamer, and that's a rough orientation of how that access easement exists today. So should the Simon property be purchased for development of a home site, that would be the route to develop the driveway into the property. So the proposed acquisition of the Simon property would serve to protect the view sheds from within Las Trampas Wilderness. Also complements the Park District's recent Lothamer acquisition by maintaining the integrity of the site as a future potential staging area for public recreational trail access, and will prevent habitat degradation that would result from constructing a driveway across the riparian zone that I pointed out earlier. We'll look at some photos of the property. So this is taken on the Lothamer property, and there you see the former residence.
Would have had quite a view.
The backdrop for the Lothamer property in this direction, which is looking southerly, and the residence is the Simon property. That's the entire hillside there that you see. Again, 7.8 acres, most of it hillside, but you do have that level area at the very top of that hill, and that's where the home site would be. This is starting up that hill to reach the top there at the home site. So this is somewhat obscured, but it's looking into the riparian corridor. There's a seasonal drainage again that runs through the property, and that is the boundary, that drainage between Lothamer and the Simon property. And then traveling up the hill, again, kind of get a sense of the mosaic of the vegetation there on the property. Now this is at the top, looking at the flat area. This is looking westerly towards the town of Moraga. Down below there would be Bollinger Canyon Road, and some interesting cloud formations for a good photograph. Now this is standing on that level site on the Simon property, and now we're looking northwest into Las Trampas Wilderness. This area is currently land banked, but you have unobstructed view from Simon up into the future area for opening for public use. And just the same, in turn, if you now look back at the Simon property in that direction, we're looking westerly, standing within the open space within the preserve. You can see how that potential home site is a pretty prominent location on that landscape, on that view. So today's action requests a funding appropriation of $18,200, which would go towards making a deposit for the purchase and related due diligence costs. And at this time, I would welcome questions from the board regarding this proposed acquisition.
Okay, questions, comments? Director Lane?
Thank you. Seeing the pictures of it makes it even more convincing why we should purchase this. I drove up Valley Hill last week. I was on my way to something and took my life in my hands and turned off St. Mary's into Bollinger. And I was struck with how narrow it is. You know, you get down to the end of paved Bollinger Canyon, and that's just about where you go left up to Valley Hill. And it's really a single road, single car for quite a while. And I know there's a number of other homes beyond the properties that we're talking about. So I'm wondering if you can comment on what we still need to do in order, vis-a-vis the road, in order to open this access. And you said that this is inside the county, right?
Correct.
Yeah, because I had thought it was inside Moraga, but it's not. It's county property.
Director Lane, that's a good question. As the property, I'm sorry, the town boundary actually runs along Valley Hill Drive. So if you're on the west or northerly side of Valley Hill, you're in the town. And then this property on the east side, along with
Okay, so that's the border.
Unincorporated.
Okay.
At that location, correct. As for the larger question of access and the road there, that's something that the Park District staff, other units are looking into. Planning is looking into that. The Valley Hill Drive is a private road, and so that's one factor that would have to be accounted for in developing access and utilizing the Lothar property, is to perfect public access up that section of Valley Hill Drive, not the entire length of it, but there's about a half mile there to get into Lothar.
So in order to do that, do we need to get the agreement of the other people who are living along the private road? What's the process for that?
That would have to be negotiated with each of the property owners that front on that road. There is, on one half of the road has an open offer of dedication to the county for a public road. The county, so we have done some investigation into this, and there's some potential there, and again, that's something that we are pursuing and looking into further.
And Director Lane, this is the first step in doing the land use plan for that staging area, is to do the underlying title research. There actually are just a couple of property ownerships, one major owner, well-known in Moraga, and one other property owner. But we have to look back in the original subdivision of these areas and look back at the title to do that. So it's really a survey and title search, and Michael and staff are already well into that, and we will bring that map, bring that map back and give you that information. We're kind of in the middle of researching it now.
Okay, well, once again,
Well, and
it
just-
is very important, and it's the access from the La Miranda area. So I appreciate having some funds in the budget this year to pursue figuring all of those things out.
Also mention on the narrowness of the frontage road going into Bollinger, I believe there's close to 50 houses up that canyon on that narrow access. The county has allowed the ranchette development up Bollinger Canyon and without any road improvements.
Okay. Any other directors have a comment? Director Rosario.
One is, I know one of the landowners up there, Sam Sperry, and you have, I think I forwarded you an email. He had an open invitation to tour, and he and his wife are looking forward to the Park District opening up a staging area down here. And so I encourage you to visit and take him up on his offer. His name's Sam Sperry. And also, I was wondering about this is not about the Simon part, but the Lothar, is that house, have we opened that up as a residence yet?
I will defer that to Dr. Alvarez to.
Good dodge.
Director Rosario, Dr. Ana Alvarez, Deputy General Manager. That particular residence is currently being assessed to determine the best use in looking at the overall park residence program, in addition to other potential uses. It's one out of several properties that we're looking at based on our conversations from the last workshop.
Okay.
And it hasn't been sitting idle because staff has been doing extensive work on everything from septic systems to other repairs on the building.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Then I'm open for a motion. I think Director Lane.
Yeah, actually, Valley Hill is is the northwest boundary of my ward. So I would move that we authorize entering into an option purchase and site agreement for this Simon is it Simon
Simon, correct.
property?
Do I hear a second? Director Rosario seconds. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It may be small, but it's important. Okay, the next item is, one that's less fun, but okay. This is EKI, Environment and Water Incorporated, for remedial investigation, ecological and human health risk assessment of the former Anthony Chabot Marksmanship Range, Anthony Chabot Regional Park.
Okay, thank you, President Wieskamp, members of the board. Matt Grawl, the District's Chief of Stewardship, and today I'm going to be presenting on the process we went through to select EKI, and also going to give you some history on the background of the range, and then what we're going to be doing under this initial remedial investigative study. Since we last took action to close the range, we do have several new members on the board, and I know this process to close the range went through numerous board committee meetings and board meetings. But I am going to just give a little bit of an overview so we all have some common terminology, timeline, and understand really the site location before I get into the specifics. And so here you can see from the maps the general location on the left within the vicinity, and then on the right the specific area where the range is located within Anthony Chabot Regional Park. The range operations began in 1963. The range was developed by the Park District in cooperation with the Oakland Pistol Club initially. There were several groups that used it. You can see this map. This is one we found in the historic files. I honestly don't know the origin, but it's also called the Grass Valley Rifle Pistol Range back then. So in the early iterations, there were various groups that used it. Then the Chabot Gun Club was formed at some point, and in 1989 we established a 25-year lease with the Chabot Gun Club. That also had a minor extension at the end as we were negotiating with them over a potential long-term use. And in March 2016, the Park District voted to close the marksmanship range due to concerns about the lead contamination at the site. We did extensive investigation of the site at the time, and there were some new stormwater rules that came into play with the NPDES permit for industrial stormwater, and the new rules really changed the requirements for the site. And we already had a stormwater pollution prevention plan in place, but in order to stay in compliance with these new requirements, we were going to have to install a very expensive stormwater treatment system. And so we were looking at anywhere from $1.25 to $2.5 million for that stormwater treatment system, and the ongoing upkeep and operation of that site to keep the club in compliance and to make sure that no lead was leaving the site during operation. So just based on that, we decided to close the range. And then in 2016, we started doing some things to clean. After it was decided to close the range, we did give them to the end of 2016 to operate. And they left the club in August of 2016. So after they left, we started with a demolition contract at the end of 2016 into 2017. And we demolished some of the buildings, and we were also able to implement additional stormwater controls in that time because the site was no longer operating. So we were able to do some things that we couldn't have done with an active range that have made it much easier to manage the stormwater over the last few years. Here's what it looked like, and it's very hard if you go out there today to see, and most of these facilities have been demolished, but this is just an overview of how it used to operate. On the right here we have the trap range, and they used to shoot clay pigeons up this way, and they would shoot those with shotguns. So there's extensive lead shot in this area in the shot fall zone. Also, we've been told historically that they used to shoot up this way. So in the current operations, it used to be mainly in this vicinity, but we were told that they did some shooting up in this valley in this direction. So while we have this typical operations, we're going to have to investigate beyond what is typical just to make sure we understand everything that used to happen out in this location. There were also a number of park residences, office, and then here they had a long-range area where they were shooting from this area to some targets over here. So it was more long-distance shooting. This shows some of that more specifically, just with how the range operated. Here was the trap range. Then they had these small areas where they used pistols and smaller firearms in range 3, 4, and 5. Then on range 1 and 2, they used more long or more rifles and things, and then in the long range area, they had much longer range weapons operating in that area. So one thing just want to point out on this site, I'll talk more about the selection process, but when we did a field trip with our consultants, and we looked at this map and things, and one thing they noticed as being on site was, well, this is a large site. Well, I mean, we saw the maps, we saw how you described it, but being on site, they realized that they all made comments about just the size of the location. And that can work for us and against us in some ways. I think against us, and there may be the pollution could be spread out over a fairly large area. But the other thing is that we have a large site to work with, so we may be able to consolidate this material and contain it in one area on the property. But that's what we're going to be identifying on this process.
So Matt, is the trap range, how much higher than the rest of it is the trap range? I mean, because doesn't the elevation go up like that?
A little bit. It's
Not a lot?
Not a lot.
I'm just wondering about the drainage then, is all going toward the range 8? would you say?
Yes, it all makes its way. It's all, there is a whole pipe system here that has various inlets along the way, and so all this water kind of runs back into the center and then runs down a central drainage system. Since you're asking right now, we are capturing all that water and then we're pumping it back up onto the site. So we're ponding water on these ranges right now, so we don't have off-site runoff of the lead off-site. We do, everything has to be pumped back up here and then infiltrate through the ground before it can leave back into the creek now. We couldn't do that when they were operating because in the winter, this whole area is flooded, all these ranges, and they used to have targets and they couldn't walk through that water to get out to shoot over that water. So that's how we're maintaining it now. But that's not a long-term solution. That's only a temporary solution to contain the water. So here are what some of the buildings that were on the site, just to get a flavor of what was out there. There's a residence here in the bottom right. This was one of their operational facilities at the top. There was also these shooting galleries with these roofs, and they would shoot towards targets from here. This area to the left is the clubhouse, and then they had various structures throughout the club area and throughout the ranges. This is what it looks like today. All of the facilities and structures are gone. We did leave the concrete pads, and there is this little, we did maintain a small shed here that has an electrical panel in it, and the ability to use that for our site investigations or other remedial actions if we need power to the site. Here's just another overview of the site. And I guess one thing else to point out, we're talking about the stormwater management. A lot of these areas are bare ground because of the foot traffic and all these areas when they were walking from where they were shooting to the targets. Now that we haven't had operation, the vegetation's come back. It's just much better as far as containing any of the pollution on site, so we don't have the potential for things to leave the site now that it's not operating. Okay, so the purpose of this investigation is really to identify the extent and concentration of contaminants of concern. We're going to also evaluate the potential impacts to groundwater and eventually evaluate the potential ecotoxicity that may be present due to this long-term operation. Some of the potential contaminants they're going to look at, lead is the obvious one. There's also potential metals, things like arsenic, copper, tin, zinc, and tungsten. Those are all things that may be produced by bullet fragments. They also were using clay pigeons for a number of years that had PAHs, polyaromatic hydrocarbons, that were part of them. When we started doing a stormwater pollution prevention plan for the site in 2009, we asked them to switch over to biodegradable clay pigeons, but there was a long history of using these clay pigeons out, and there are even some of the roads they were crushed up in the past when it was, and they were used as road base on some of the sites. So that was very typical, apparently, of sites in the 70s, 80s, and so that's one thing that we're not sure about. You can see in this photo here, and so this really shows some of those bullet fragments and other things. In this top photo, the bottom shows some of the plastic wadding and other things that were used as part of the casings for some of the shells. So all these things are on the site, and a lot of it on the surface has been cleaned up, but some of these things may be still present in subsurface. And also the legacy contamination on site. So there's septic tanks and buildings. We do know anecdotally that they were doing some bullet manufacturing on site at times of the club was in operation, so we have some concern they may have used certain solvents, that TCE is a common one, that could have been used in a localized area. So we're going to have to look at that. There's also potential that they may have dumped those chemicals into the septic system on site. That was a common thing in the past. People just dump things down the toilet thinking they're flushing it away, But as we know, there's no away. Everything goes somewhere. And so that's what we'll be looking at as we do this investigation. We issued the RFP in February of 2019, and we asked for the following items. One, for a remedial investigation of the site. Two, we wanted a human health risk assessment and also an ecological risk assessment. And we also wanted remediation goals and a full site investigation plan. And so that's what we received back from the proposals. We issued 11 of those proposals. But also we asked, one thing we also asked in the qualifications was their potential qualifications to a future feasibility study and a remediation plan. And we asked all the consultants to submit their skills and abilities to do that work if we wanted to then contract in the future for some of those future actions with the firms that we've interviewed during this selection process. During the process, we had a site tour on February 27th, and after the process, we had 11 proposals that were submitted, and we had 4 finalists that we interviewed, and we selected EK Environment and Water. We selected them primarily for their experience and really for their overall understanding of this site. They had a very good understanding of what would need to be done to understand the extent of the pollution on the site, and we really just felt most confident in their approach to that site characterization. Some of the firms we know didn't understand the extent of the potential things on site, didn't identify the potential for the septic systems, or for one thing I haven't talked about is potential for aerial deposition. One thing we did find in some of our investigations in the past is some of the dust on the roofs for the ranges had high lead content. And so when we were dealing with that stormwater, we had to be careful that the roof runoff didn't go directly into a storm drain, because we didn't want to send sediment, dust on the roof directly into the downstream area. So we were trying to control that. So we know there's a potential that some of these areas there may be some windblown dust. So anyway, EKI understood all those, the complexity of the factors involved. And we felt like in some of the other cases, they didn't understand the complexity and give us a simple proposal. And when we start talking to the regulatory agencies, they're going to ask all those questions, and we need to be able to answer them. And we didn't want to come to you with some of the other proposals that didn't identify that characters, and they have to come back and amending the contract all the time. We wanted to make sure we had one that really understood everything that was going to need to be done and would really work for our interests to minimize. I think we also had some other proposals that we felt like were just padding it with additional studies that may not be needed, and that maybe just because we might think it's a good idea, they may not be required by the agencies. So we really want to have be mindful of how we do it, but also make sure we're getting a detailed site assessment. And the project manager, working on this, he also has 35 years of experience in negotiating with DTSC and the Water Board on these cleanup actions. And I also had experience working on the Presidio gun range that was remediated, and also for Peninsula Open Space Trust in San Mateo on some private land on an acquisition they did. They also helped develop a remediation and cleanup plan for a site. So they do have specific experience working on gun ranges. So the proposed schedule for this contract will be starting later this month, and the first aspect will be the draft investigation work plan, and then we'll be submitting that later this year to the DTSC and the Water Board, and then we'll determine who's going to be that lead agency. They have to determine who's going to take the lead. They both have an option. It does make more sense, we believe, for DTSC to handle this because they've done more closures of gun ranges in an active way. The Water Board typically works on them when they're on the edge of the bay and there's a direct water impact. So we think really that in this site, DTSC might be the best fit, but either would be good, and either we can work with. And that will really going to leave it up to them as we submit and they go through their resolution process. That's just a typical process for the agencies to decide who would take the lead. And after we have their buy-in on the investigation plan, then we will start doing our site investigation next year, and that will really evaluate the order and magnitude for the cleanup alternatives. And then we will have a full draft report to the agencies early in 2020. And then we'll start preparing the work plan for the human health and ecological risk assessment, and then get that approved, and then we'll start conducting that risk assessment towards the end of September and November of 2020. Really, we can't start the ecological health assessment until we know what's out there. We have to know the extent of the pollution before we can do that risk assessment. So some of the factors that are going to influence the cost, it's really the site variability, different shooting ranges of different lengths. The berms, we don't know how they were constructed. They just have berms in between the ranges. We don't know if they've, over time, dug up material from the ranges and piled it on those berms. So there could be things buried under there that we just don't know about. But that's what we're going to find out. The same thing with the extent of the contamination through aerial deposition that I mentioned. We don't think it's in the groundwater because of how this site was operated and how it was constructed. It was all previously fill, so we're operating on fill, so there is a pretty significant height difference between the ground elevation and groundwater at the site, and lead is not typically insoluble. So typically lead is not going to permeate in water deeper into the soil. But we, again, not knowing the historic operation and what happened out there over the last 50 years completely, we're going to have to really look at that. And if we do find it in the groundwater, it could really expand. But like I said, we don't think it is now, but we will keep you informed as we move forward. And then also the goals for the use of the site. Once we understand what's there and we start looking at those goals, the goals for the use could really drive what cleanup goals we need to meet. If we want to have active recreation with young children out there, we're going to have to meet the highest standards, similar to a residential standard. If we want to close it up and cover everything up and put land use controls wherever we cap material in place, we'll have to have a clean clay cap with just grass on top. We can't have trees or anything else growing, and we can't have people or individuals disturbing that cap. So that's all going to have to be really carefully thought about. And really, until we know the extent of the pollution and the volume of material we're dealing with, it's going to be really hard to have those conversations. But we'll be getting that detail in this investigation and be able to give you some very specific numbers and scenarios on some of the cost ranges for these alternatives. So that's really the end of my presentation, and be happy to answer any questions.
Comments from any board member? Director Lane has a question.
Well, because we have collected water and put it back on the facility, have we done any kind of testing to really have some indication that there is lead in the water?
Yes.
So we've done some testing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, historically there was lead in the water. Sure. I mean, as it comes across the bullets. I mean, the concentration is a little bit less because we're having less bullets being produced on a regular basis. You know, they're not being put outside. And there's more vegetation, so a lot of less of the soil is being exposed, but there's lead in the stormwater, but that we are containing on site.
We start with.
Yeah.
Anyone else have a comment or question?
I do.
Director Corbett.
Thank you very much. Matt, I was just wondering, I'm sure we're probably going to catalog this, and our consultant is going to also, so that whatever we learn from it, we can share with others who may have to go through these kinds of cleanups.
Yes.
I think it'd be a good thing. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and as we develop these plans and reports and submit them to DTS and the Water Board, and once they're final reports, they're public documents, so yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? The man hears about it once in a while, golf course.
Thank you. I hesitate to ask this, Matt, but I just this last weekend I was asked about this gun range by one of my dear friends. And I think I know the answer, but could you give me the answer of why are you spending all this money when there's tons of lead weights in the bottom of Lake Chabot? And I'm sure that it's encapsulated in sediment for 40 years or 50 years. Is that the answer? Is that the simple answer?
Yes, and it's in different forms. I mean, in a lead weight, I mean, it's in a solid form, and it's much different than what you see on this site. We have lead in all various different forms. We have it in bullet fragments, we have it in dust, we have it in all various sizes, and so it becomes, and plus it's been operating out there for so long, but just much more spread out on the landscape and much more mobile on this terrestrial site. When it's in a lead weight, you would have a risk if you started breaking that open and breaking it into parts and things like that. But the lead weight itself is a little bit more stable than all these various forms. I mean, that is a concern though in the history of that. And so in many of our reservoirs, we do have lead weights exchange. We're trying to sell them in most of our concessionaires. So I don't think we encourage that use anymore. So it's something we certainly wouldn't want to see happening.
Right. I think Lake Chabot, the marina is only selling steel weights now, if I'm not
Right.
mistaken.
That's what I understand. That's my understanding.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this part of the process?
President Wieskamp, can you go back to the original aerial, very beginning? The overall aerial?
Sure.
Either one of the. So if you look and see where the upper road is to the right side of the slide, and then you look at the range, I'd like us, as part of the eventual decisions on this site, to look at, can this operate as a fuel break as part of the overall Anthony Chabot fuel breaks? Because you've got one of the few sites that's an open grassy meadow. And if you connected it up to the right and down maybe to the fire road, you'd be providing yet another fuel break. So we should just look at that, because that's a really important part of Anthony Chabot, the fuel break process. And since it's open already, I'd hate for, no matter what the regulations is, to have it all grow back in, even though you're saying it can't because of whatever remediation we do. But
I mean,
that's one of the few places you've got an open grassy valley.
Right, and just, I mean, for discussion purposes, I mean, if we consolidate all the material here and capped it, this would stay open and grassy, but I understand what you're saying, and I think the idea is creating more of a fuel break through this area, so this whole area operates as a fuel break. I think that is a good suggestion.
Because our fuel break, if you look on the plan, it strips through the forest.
Yeah.
They kind of look at that angle. So I don't know if this is already one of them.
Yeah.
Could be, but we should just look at that.
Well, I don't know as far as a fuel break in there, but I do know that there are recommended treatment areas for thinning of the forest in this area and in this area. I think some of those, initially we were concerned about doing too much when there was a gun club in operation. Now I think we have a lot more flexibility because of the noise. But one of the other things I'll point out as we're talking about this, a lot of these trees here have shot in the trees and a lot of bullet fragments in the trees themselves. It may be very challenging to remove that. We may have to have a special plan on how we monitor and observe those trees for removal, because it'll be very expensive to dispose of a tree filled with lead shot. So.
Oh my gosh, okay. All right. Always interesting issues, Matt, that you bring forward. Okay, do we have a motion to approve going forward with this contract?
I would move that motion.
Director Wasby, Director Corbett. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries, and good luck, Matt. That's quite a process coming up. Okay, then we will go down to board and staff reports. Actions taken by other jurisdictions affecting the park.
You have two items, extremely successful support from the Board of Supervisors in the City of Richmond on looking at the concerns we have expressed in our land use plan.
I would say so.
A lot of good press on that, and I really want to thank the team for getting that news out. We're not out of the woods yet, but we'll keep the good fight going. And the second item is City of Concord, and Director Lane will be going to the City of Concord tonight, as well as Chief of Planning Brian Holt. Any questions?
Any questions? Good luck, Director Lane. Yeah, it's kind of exciting. It's getting closer, huh? Okay, the next will be General Manager's comments.
Yes, first of all, I want to acknowledge the fine work of Public Affairs to get you the much-anticipated local grant program before you. Something we realized really that Director Coffey brought forward is that we're not getting full credit for the actual local recreation we are providing to cities, which we don't do. But I think this new printout really tells an incredible story of leveraging funds for local recreation. And it was about time that we take some bows for giving that money out to the cities. And I think it really is a great production. I really want to encourage board members, as you're going to public meetings and with elected local officials, to give them copies of this so they are reminded that we're really providing a lot of recreation. And I will talk to Eric Fuller and Dave Mason about what our distribution will be, so you know who will be getting it already. But I'm really happy to see that out. And it took a long time, but as usual, it took a long time, and it's a quality product. So, thank you.
Very showy.
So I'm very pleased. Our ongoing, never-ending story of managing Lake Del Valle and dealing with Department of Water Resources and Santa Clara County and Zone 7 and flooding and droughts. So we thought we would give you an update. This is really something that operations has worked very, very hard, and we really did escape a year with all this rain. We did not flood. So that's not an accident. We really work closely with DWR on this and others. So Steve Castile, Chief of Operations, will present this along with Matt. Thank you.
Good afternoon, President Wieskamp, members of the board. Steve Castile, Chief of Park Operations. So as General Manager Doyle had stated, that yes, we have gone through several years of inclement weather and severe weather storm systems over at Lake Del Valle, and which has provided us opportunities to actually take a look at how we do our protocols in anticipation, working with the different agencies on managing the influx of water that comes in and out of Lake Del Valle, and how it affects operations and the things that we have to do to interact with that. So with that, we're going to be, Matt will be providing an update, taking a look at where we were, where we had done the protocols, and how we've looking forward to moving forward with some of the different ideas that are coming about. So with that, I'll hand it over to Matt.
Welcome, Matt.
Thank you. Good afternoon, President Wieskamp and members of the board. I'm Matt McDonald, Park Supervisor of Coyote Hills, and I'm here to discuss the Del Valle flood protocols from this year, which were enacted during my 6-month acting assignment as the Lakes Unit Manager. In October 1962, Del Valle was created through an act of Congress for flood control and recreation purposes. Del Valle is also used to augment drinking water from 3 water districts. Our primary partners in the lake level are the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and Department of Water Resources. The lake levels are monitored by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the dam in the lake level is managed by the Department of Water Resources. Our additional partners are Zone 7 Water District, Alameda County Water District, and Valley Water, formerly known as Santa Clara Valley Water District. They just rebranded this year. Yeah. Along with East Bay Regional Park District, these agencies are known as the South Bay Contractors. During flood and drought years, East Bay Regional Park District works with these agencies to ensure that we're maintaining our legal mandate to provide recreation. So our concerns, our normal operational level for Lake Del Valle is at 703.1 feet above mean sea level. Del Valle is measured in feet above sea level and the amount of acre feet per water. At a 703.1, there's approximately 40,000 acre feet of water, or over 13 billion gallons. During the extreme rainy seasons like we have just come out of, we must monitor our lake levels and take into consideration that any amount of water captured at Del Valle could impact our infrastructure. As you can see from the slide, during floods, at 704.5 feet, MSL is where our first main infrastructure is impacted, closely followed by buildings and sewage lift pump stations. As you will see later, we work with our partners to monitor the lake and release the water to protect the assets of the park. This graph is an excellent representation of the lake level and what it means to the infrastructure and recreation. Our raw water intake is at 680 MSL. Below this level, we're no longer able to make water to supply both drinking water and flushable toilets for the public or staff. Additionally, we're not able to utilize the boat ramp at the marina below 680 feet. As we move higher in elevation, we get to the operating level of 696 to 703.1 for recreation, such as swimming, boating, and making water. During high rate events, we start monitoring rainfall, incoming water from the arroyo and the campground, and releases from the dam to ensure that we maintain that 696 to 703. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is mandated to release water only during specific parameters, such as the amount of flow from the dam coupled with downstream flows and how they will be impacted. You can see at 705 is where the kayak rentals are impacted. 705.5 is where our first sewage lift pump station is impacted. And as we'll show you later, 729 was the 1986 flood. And as another point, 748 is the top of the spillway, and that's where the Army Corps of Engineers has the right to maintain water for flood control purposes. So in balancing the reservoir, Del Valle Park Supervisor Shelley Miller and the Lakes Unit Manager, along with other hire managers, utilized several websites, along with phone and email contact with our partner agencies to monitor the incoming and outgoing water to balance the lake level. Through DWR, we monitor Lang Canyon, which we call the arroyo and the campground. There's a little difference in terminology. We also monitor the lake level and releases from the dam, and the water speed at the Arroyo del Valle and Niles Canyon. We couple these with forecasts from National Weather Service, project what incoming rains will impact the lake level. As a guide, we use about 1 inch of rain in 12 hours, which will increase the lake about 1 foot in height. U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is mandated not to let water travel faster than 5,000 cubic feet per second in the Arroyo and Niles Canyon. And for instance, in 2017, Niles was flowing at 9,000 cubic feet per second, and Lang Canyon was flowing at 12,000 cubic feet per second. So here's a bit of our flooding history. In March 1986, the lake flooded. We got to a point of 729 feet. Del Valle has seen a number of floods since its opening, and 2 worst have been in 1986 and 2017. As you can see here, it flooded what is known as the visitor center and the concession center. And again, for reference, this was at 729 feet. The Army Corps of Engineers is allowed to go to 748 feet if they need to. In January and February of 2017, we saw extensive storms come through the Bay Area. That year, we were able to work with our lake level partners to keep the level down from the 86 flood, but so much water had been coming through Lang Canyon, it was more water than could be released based on the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers mandated parameters, and the park flooded quickly. In 2019, the weeks prior to Valentine's Day, the day the park closed, myself and Park Supervisor Shelley Miller had been monitoring lake levels and noticed that they were getting very close to flood stage. On Valentine's Day morning, Chief of Operations Steve Castile and myself worked through U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and Department of Water Resources to release enough water to keep the lake level low enough so we could get crews into the park to remove or protect our infrastructure. Through close monitoring and working with our partner agencies, we were able to get ahead of any flooding and protect the assets. The flood was a smooth transition compared to previous years due to the close working relationships and monitoring the lake levels. East Bay Park staff worked tirelessly in the rain on Valentine's Day from 2:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. to remove all district assets and protect those that couldn't be moved, such as water heaters. That night, we were anticipating a large storm to come through and were able to breathe a sigh of relief by all that hard work that staff put in. In the end of the night, we were 3 inches from flooding our first electrical infrastructure. You can see this little line right here. That post is where our electrical infrastructure is for the kayak building. We were within 3 inches of that. Yeah, it's right there. That post that's standing up is where our electrical infrastructure is for the kayak building. The park reopened on March 15th for Brazen Racin's 8th annual Badger Cove Half Marathon. As I said, we monitor lake levels, flows in and out of the lake, and weather reports, as you can see from our operational responsibilities. The key for us this year was that we were able to coordinate with our partner agencies early and get water releases from the lake and to hold off flood levels to protect the infrastructure and assets. Once we have decided that we need to close the park due to flooding and potential flooding, we initiate an incident command to bring in other divisions from the park to help out. The lake unit manager is designated as the incident commander to coordinate with the various divisions to protect the park and ensure the public safety. We get public safety to come out with the police for the safety of the public to clear the campground, and they provide us with public safety student aides to work at the kiosk for public information. The fire department brings in an engine in case we have a medical incident with staff working that late and in the rain, and also to provide us lighting with the vehicle lights that they have so that we're not in the dark. We contact reservations to cancel any upcoming reservations and update the Reserve America website. And we work with finance to develop project codes so that we can track for FEMA and financial costs. The Del Valle operations staff is responsible for removing our owned assets that the concessionaires use in the marina building and the east side concession. So we have to remove those, and staff has to rent vehicles to get them out. We also work with MAST, the Water Utilities Department, can't say enough thanks to them, carpenters and plumbers. Water Utilities Department comes and they will actually pump out the 3 of the 6 lift stations that will be flooded over 705.5 feet. They remove the panels that control these stations to protect our infrastructure. And the plumbers and carpenters work to protect the assets. I mentioned water heaters before. Our new bathrooms that we have in the campground, the water heaters were put in there and then the roof was put on. We can't remove them, so we actually have to build them up in order to protect them. And we also ensure that PG&E has shut down power to the park that goes to the 3 lift stations that we're worried about. while leaving power on to the office and the other 3 lift stations so staff can still work there. And last but not least, we contact public affairs to get the messaging out and our website updates and any closure notices that we need for people. We were able to respond so quickly and efficiently this year due to early coordination and quick mobilization. The morning of February 14th, we were able to coordinate with the Chief of Mass, Public Safety, Finance, and our concessionaires to give them warning that the park would flood. That early warning got us quicker response and helped the overall effect. One of the things that we were able to do is, in those response, get all of that information coalesced so that we could provide it if we needed it for FEMA or insurance purposes. Both during and after the enacted flood protocols, we were looking at ways to improve our response times. From the 2017 flood, Assistant Finance Officer Jeff Rasmussen purchased a new kayak water sports building that is on a trailer and mobile. This building will be removed at the end of each season and placed in an area that won't flood. Concessionaires will also be responsible for renting containers to store their equipment and supplies at the end of each season and be responsible for clearing their supplies out before the rain starts, so we don't do this at the last minute. We're also partnering with PG&E to get immediate attention to turning on and off the power to the park when we need it. And we will also be conducting inspections of the facilities to document the condition before and after the floods to improve upon our documentation for the FEMA or insurance claims. Thank you very much for your time. Do you have any questions?
What a great experience for you.
Yes, it was.
What a learning experience.
It wasn't jumping into the fire, it was jumping into the flood.
Well, either one is not easy to deal with, so congratulations, and
Thank
it
you.
looks like a lot of things have changed, so that's
Thank you very
good.
much.
It's good. Comments or questions from the board?
I've been
Oh,
preparing
excuse
for
me,
this, so
Corbett.
please.
Director Corbett.
I just wanted to say it's very, very impressive, very important pre-mitigation work to protect people's safety and lives and property. It's very impressive. You know, thank you for all the hard work and, you know, advanced planning. It's a model that should be shared. Thank you.
Yes, definitely, and we'll be
Yeah.
moving forward with it too. Well, thank you very much.
Well,
Oh,
just one second.
Oh, sorry.
You don't move.
no ma'am.
Director Watsby?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And once again, advanced planning, it's incredible how it was. I remember after 86, as a carpenter, I went in there and replaced 100 doors, or more than 100 doors, I think it was, 1 3/4 solid core doors. Because everything flooded, all the water heaters rose up and broke, and the plumbers did all that repair, and every door warped like crazy and just delaminated. It
Well,
was-
this will make you laugh because removing doors was one of the things that
Oh,
the carpenters did. It
That's
was
the key thing, to get
yeah.
rid of those. They're expensive and it takes a long time to replace them. Could you go back to the slide that showed the elevations?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so just as a cautionary tale, at the crest of the dam is 773 feet mean,
Right.
whatever that is, and we try to operate at 696.
Between 696 and 703.1.
Yeah, I can't do that math. No, I can do that math. It's 77 feet, and how many acres that lake is, that's a lot of water. And a precautionary tale to board members that are new, I think Member Wieskamp and I went to a meeting of water agencies and our agency a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, in the height of the drought, when they were licking their chops saying, all that is storage capacity, and never once even considered there were 2 or 3 little Mr. Mulhollands there just saying, hey, this is how we solve all the problems, just float it right up to the top, and had no concern for recreation. And General Manager Doyle pointed out that part of that law or statute or whatever it is that created that did include recreation. They weren't impressed, though. They had the 7 years of drought behind them, and so it is a precautionary tale that we need
Yes,
to be
if I
vigilant.
may add, absolutely. Deputy General Manager Ana Alvarez, our GM had to step out. He was not feeling well. I remember distinctively that meeting, and it continues to be a priority item for our government affairs team. And I remember distinctively a phrase from Mr. Doyle that says, where the water districts were saying water is life, he said, yes, water is life and recreation is quality of life. So we continue to engage in those discussions. And I just want to say, yes, you came into the flood, not into the fire, and we're really, really extremely proud of the work that operations has done. Your staff, Ms. Miller, Castile, and Jim O'Connor, because it really brings the best of the Park District together when there isn't anything better than an emergency to bring the best of the Park District forward. And we saw it very clearly on the 2017 flood. And we still have not finished the projects, the storm-related projects that operations took the lead of, because now we're just basically waiting for additional FEMA money and to be able to have the capacity to finish all that work.
Well, I think you deserve commendations for while you're in the middle of terror to think FEMA is going to come and we want our money. And I think that is just such a smart thing to do.
I was very fortunate, and the staff has been amazing to work with, all of Lakes Unit staff, and we knew ahead of time to make sure to get those numbers, and it didn't hurt that I had done the FEMA acting assignment for the administrative assistant, so I knew what.
I've had some interesting opportunities
Yes, I have.
there, but it works for the district, so thank you so much, Matt.
Thank you very much.
Good job all around, and I know you're all working with the other agencies to stay on top of this, because there's always new people coming in. And so you've got to keep that relationship going so everybody understands recreation needs are important and they're a little different than just storing water.
Yes, they are.
So thank you very much.
And Director Wieskamp, if I may, so the board approved our insurance program on consent today. And FEMA is only a backstop if an emergency has been declared, but our insurance will always be there for us.
Okay. We know what to do. Well-trained staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any announcements from closed session?
There are no announcements from closed session.
Thank you. Next item is the board committee reports. Natural and Cultural Resources Committee. Anybody have a comment or question? Okay.
Madam President, we do have someone that'd like to speak on that topic.
Certainly.
Yeah.
You may come up, me.
So Norman LaForce, behalf of the Sierra Club. I just wanted to comment that I know there's been some discussion and there's going to be some further discussion about the use of pesticides and herbicides. And I think people need to keep in mind that herbicides and pesticides do have beneficial uses and purposes. They're a poison, okay, but poisons have beneficial and useful purposes. And in the area of dealing with non-native invasive species, they can be very important as the tool to use in handling and controlling them. The examples I use, because poisons can also have beneficial purposes if controlled. And when I talk to people, the two examples I use are radiation. We can all die from exposure to radiation, but when radiation is used in a appropriate controlled manner, it's what kills many cancers and saves lives. So what do? Ban radiation treatment because radiation's a poison? No. Similarly, for anyone who takes Coumadin as a blood thinner for stroke prevention, Coumadin is rat poison, pure and simple. It's warfarin. It's rat poison. So anybody who ingests Coumadin is essentially eating rat poison. But when it's used in a dosage, an appropriate dosage, in a controlled way and monitored, it saves lives and prevents stroke. On the flip side, everybody says water's life, right? Well, actually, you can die from ingesting too much water.
Yes,
Really.
that's true.
There was example a few years ago at a fraternity where they kept pumping a person with water and they died. So I think when we deal with an integrated pest management program and how it's to be used, the notion that somehow, oh, that's a herbicide, that's bad, that's a pesticide, that's bad, needs to be put aside, and it needs to be looked at in the context of what the program is, how the use of those various poisons are being done, what the controls are, and in what manner are they being, and what purpose they're being used for. No one has suggested, and the Park District doesn't do, the typical spraying poisons all over the fields of corn and soybeans that has been done for decades in the Midwest and other parts of the country, and also in our Central Valley. That's simply a wrong method, a wrong control of herbicides and pesticides. So that's just something I wanted to bring to the attention of the board. I know there'll be some further ongoing discussions, but I think it's important to keep that in mind. Thanks.
Thank you, Norman. We appreciate your staying to make a comment. Any other comments from, I don't see any other public, so I think I'm safe in that. Board comments. Let's start with D. There was a glazed look in his eyes, like, me? Me? Would you like me to start at the other end? Colin says he's willing to start. Yay, Colin is ready. Go for it.
Yeah, and
Director Coffey.
I gotta take off by 4, unfortunately, so it's a good idea to let me go.
Perfect.
Thank you. I attended, the GM referred to the City of Richmond's support of our position with the railroad. I went to that City Council meeting on the 21st after our meeting, and there was a large crowd there to speak in support of our cause. On the 22nd, I attended with many of you the Park Volunteer Barbecue at Cull Canyon, which went very well, as it usually does. On the 24th, with Director Rosario, I attended the Richmond Liaison Committee at Richmond City Hall. Quite a bit of discussion about Point Mulati. I guess that was the focus of that meeting. The Environmental Labor Coalition of Contra Costa County, hosted by the Plumbers Union in Martinez and Seth Adams of Save Mount Diablo. That meeting I attended on the 30th along with Director Lane. And I think that group is going to pursue additional meetings after being somewhat moribund for a number of years, I think. On the 2nd, I attended a Delta, Norman made sure Norman took off. I was referring it to as a Delta chapter, and he said, no, it's a Delta group. It's a small group of Sierra Club members in East Contra Costa. They're organizing, and I attended an organizational meeting of that group in Antioch on the 2nd, and then from there, Mila and I went on a moonless night hike in Black Diamond Mines with naturalist Eddie Willis, and in order essentially to get up way up high and watch the sun go down. And then on the trip down, examine the nightlife of Black Diamond, where it is wild and crazy apparently every night.
Wild and crazy. Oh, well, do we get that in the newspaper? Okay.
Oh, going back to the 25th, I attended the multicultural walk and luncheon that Mona and her people put together. It was a wonderful group. This was at Garin, and that Saturday turned out to be our day at Garin Day, because we attended the multicultural hike group in the morning. We then attended the season opening of the Garin Visitor Center in the afternoon, and then we hiked down to Dry Creek and got to hang out for about a half hour with Jeff Bennett at the Iris Garden.
Oh, good, you got there.
Yeah, and the park supervisors gave us a little tour of the cottage in the pool area, which was interesting. I'd never been there. So that covers my report. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Then let's next go to Director Corbett.
Thank you very much. On June 22nd, I got to attend the Volunteer Recognition Barbecue with a lot of the rest of the board members and lead off a rendition of Happy Birthday to the Park District with some of our volunteers who have put in more hours than anyone else. It was a lot of fun. It's always such a really great event to spend time with all of those people that, you know, spend so much time just taking care of business in our parks as volunteers. Just a wonderful group of people. On the 30th, I went to Bruin in the Parks at Lake Chabot, which of course is always a whole lot of fun. It was a little foggy, but otherwise it was a great event. On Saturday, June 1st, I participated in the Cherry Festival Parade and had an opportunity to use my East Bay Regional Park District car magnets. So thank you so much. People are always so impressed. It's like, look, I have car magnets. They're very nice looking, red, white, and blue. And the signs also that are made by our great folks. And over the weekend, this really wasn't a Park District event, but I spent time at the Democratic State Convention and got to bump into a lot of our great partners and supporters who are doing wonderful things for us, like Assemblymember Rebecca Barr Kaplan and Bill Quirk and Nancy Skinner. So that was great fun. And you know, it's so interesting. You meet people from all over the area at these conventions, and I had lots of people who, once they found out I'm on the board of the Park District, started telling me about what their favorite park was. You know, Black Diamond and Big Break were right up there with some folks that are from Oakley. So that was really a lot of fun. And then just looking into the future, I invite you all, it's that time of year, the Sandcastle contest at Crown Memorial Beach is coming up on Saturday morning, and the concert at the Cove series in Alameda also starts up on June 14th. So if any of you want to hang out with me and put together a picnic and listen to music, some of us have done that in the past, I welcome you. And then one last bit of information. I happened to be looking at the recently, publicized City of Oakland city budget, and I was very happy to see that the City of Oakland is including funding for fire safety and a fire mitigation program, which of course is really good for us as well. So thank you to the City of Oakland for doing that. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Director Lang?
Thank you. I really enjoyed going to the volunteer recognition dinner. I think our volunteers are pretty high on the Park District from what I can see, you know, and it's always nice to see the variety of talents that they have. Then I did come in and go to Duncan Marshall's retirement event, more Park District cake, and you know, he's been one of our surveyors for a long time, and is looking forward to retirement. And then I did a hike in Las Trampas, and on Memorial Day I decided I would go down and take a hike at Shadow Cliffs and just see how the cliffs were. Well, you know, it was not good weather. And normally, it fills up at 11 o'clock and they don't let anybody in. Well, on my way down there, it sprinkled on my car, and it was chilly, and I would say maybe 10% of the parking was occupied. And that's definitely a place where people love to come when it's hot and they can barbecue. And so I think that has to be a unique experience for people managing Shadow Cliffs. So I did go over and talk to the many lifeguards, which included a large group of cadets, and said hello and what are you doing while there's no one here? And turned out they were getting a little training. You know, the lifeguard in charge said, well, here's a time to train, and was training them. But there was no one in the water other than people being baptized, you know, which does happen on Sunday. And it was a lovely time to hike, I will say, but there was no one at Shadow Cliffs. Quite a shock. Then Dee and I went to Roberts for the 442nd memorial commemoration on Saturday, and that's the first time I've ever managed to get there. We don't generally list it, and it'll get listed, and then I'll have a conflict. But I was glad I made it. There aren't too many of them left. But the man who's generally in charge, I think he's 92, Lawson Sakai, and very articulate about his fellow veterans. And it was very interesting. And Martin Snapp, who I think some of you know is a columnist, was there and did some speaking, and he evidently is there always, and had lots to say. So it was quite an interesting event. They'd planted a redwood tree 27 years ago, and it needed a little sun to get going, because it didn't look too. It looked smaller than the other redwoods there by a long shot. But that was a very interesting experience, and I'm particularly interested in Japanese Americans. So, and I have a good friend who was in the 442nd, who Mr. Sakai knew, but he said, you know, he doesn't come to this. You know, he lives in Sunnyvale or something. Then I went to the environmental labor meeting, which is always very interesting, and I went to them on and off when they were held more regularly, and we did hear from Randy, what's his last name, who is the executive director for the Transportation Authority, and lots of questions asked of him, and he's clearly someone who is totally in love with new technologies. And we did find out some interesting things. One thing being that they are planning to do another attempt at doing a half-cent sales tax next March, that they're moving along very quickly on trying to put their projects together, and want to adopt it, the project list, this month. And it seemed like they were going to have some problems with the environmental groups as they sped their way through this. And those problems with the groups at their failed half-cent election were very serious. And so I came away wondering what they were thinking. Then several things having to do with Concord, and we had in your agenda, they mentioned the 175-acre tournament sport field, which is going to be a discussion tonight at the council meeting. This is entirely borders our regional park, and they have barely talked to us about it. And there are several problems with it. And so we are going to, Brian is going to make some planner type comments, and I'm going to have some comments on how our partnership can certainly be improved.
Okay.
Ever positive.
What a fun meeting.
Of course.
Then
the
what a positive attitude. Improve our.
Then the other thing we are working on is, of course, the Camille staging area at the Las Trompas to Mount Diablo Regional Trail. So that's proceeding. And I went to Elected Women's Lunch for Contra Costa County, which was in Alamo. If they have it close by, I make it. And also our Friends of Saramone Creek is beginning a birding group and getting some help from Mount Diablo Audubon and from one man who lives locally who's a member of Golden Gate Audubon. And it's very interesting because Golden Gate Audubon is quite huge and, you know, a pretty powerful group. And he couldn't help himself but say, and of course all of the Mount Diablo Audubon people should belong to the Golden Gate Audubon group. And I was like, I've heard that before. So we're getting involved with some of the birders, which is a new experience for me at this level. And then I did want to hand around part of the Diablo magazine, which I don't know how many of you received, but they were talking about some of the most excellent adventures in the area, and one of them was Black Diamond. And they had a very interesting pictures of Black Diamond. So this was Diablo magazine in May. So I'll just pass that around for people to look at. Thank you.
Director Westby.
Thank you. On May 22nd through 25th, I attended the California Association of Recreation Park Districts Conference. It was a great conference. There were 36 special park districts represented there. Lots of great subjects, lots of very topical things. We had a great panel discussion from first responders and a director and the general manager of the Paradise Recreation and Park District, who described their efforts after their entire town burned down and sort of the recovery that's going on there right now. It's great sessions, great conference, and then I also had the opportunity to attend the Award of Distinction banquet that evening, and of course, the East Bay Regional Park District won the Outstanding Innovative Program Award for our East Bay Park prescriptions and Stay Healthy in Nature outdoor programs, our Healthy Parks, Healthy People. And we had a beautiful write-up, and I'm sure that Mona did this, and Mona was responsible for it. Everybody was incredibly impressed with it. The technicians obviously were people that are in the business were really happy. I was walking around after, and one of the wait staff was cleaning up a table and said, "That is an incredible deal. Do you really do that? That's really amazing." And she knew all about it and was very excited about that. And so I think it was a testament to Mona and all the great work you've done. And it was a great award, and they really did a great job of writing us up and slides describing our program. So I was proud to have been there. On the drive home, I got Dr. Alvarez's email while I was there, and it said, "Hey, show up to Pat O'Brien's celebration in Sacramento." So I just happened to be riding through Sacramento that time and had the great opportunity to attend and I was going to say it was the dedication of the Pat O'Brien Swim Center, but it was much bigger than that. It was the Pat O'Brien Recreation Center. There was a swim center. There were multiple pools. I think there were 3 pools. Really? Oh yeah, it was great, incredible, state of the art. A recreation center with a gymnasium with classrooms, and there was even a maintenance facility, brand new. Wow. So it was a special event. A number of park people were able to get there, and Pat looked like he was having a great time. All his grandkids were swimming in the pool and having he really enjoyed it. So it was great to be there. On May 30th, on May 29th, I had a great experience. I was invited, I guess as a retiree, to go to Medicare 101, which was yeah, and I am eligible. But it was, besides that, yeah, I've been eligible for a long time, by the way. Well, no, it was a great program because I had many, many questions. I'm very proud of the district for giving employees time off and a couple of retirees that showed up to kind of understand what's going on. Monica Alvarez-Celis did a wonderful job of presenting it. There were lots of questions, lots of apprehension when you get old and can't do anything anymore and can't think. speaking for myself, she answered all the questions, and it was really great, and there was a representative from Kaiser there, and it was just a wonderful program, and I'm very thankful for it. On May 30th, I attended What's Brewing in the Parks at Lake Chabot. Great event, great concept.
Event?
Yes. Everything was great, lots of people. Even though it was cold, lots of the community came out. It was really appreciated by everyone. On June 2nd, I attended this last Sunday, I attended the Butterfly Festival down in Coyote Hills. Great event, once again, packed with people, lots and lots of people. Beautiful day, everybody having fun, and the staff did an excellent job of not only did the staff have to deal with setting up tables, getting vendors set up, doing a wonderful job of presenting their park and getting their park ready. Now, one of the key things we have to do all the time is parking control, because everybody shows up. It was just amazing. Overflow lots were packed. People were hiking from outside the park. But it was a great event. And on Memorial Day, I went down to Lake Chabot to see what was going on. Packed, as always, even though it was a cold day. Had a great hike in Redwood Park with one of my constituents, and the Waterline project seems to be going along really well, and it's just a gorgeous park. And I went to the Iris Garden and talked to Jeff Bennett about his plans for the future, and saw some beautiful irises, and sat on that Adirondack chair just looking at those beautiful gardens for a while. It was great. And that's it for me. Thank you.
You had a very educational week.
Yeah.
Okay. Director Rosario.
Now I'm ready.
Now he's ready.
So on 5/22, attended the Finance Committee meeting here. And then also that evening, the Volunteer Recognition Dinner, which was fabulous as usual. Great organization, good cooks, managers. You guys cook a mean dinner. I think the volunteers are very appreciative of the book, the meal, and good company. And then on 5/23, I attended Duncan Marshall's retirement party, which was very bittersweet. He's been a longtime employee and very valued, and I know he helped me a lot when I was at Redwood. So hate to see him go, but he's going to a good place, retirement. And then on a non-district event, I went to the Asian Pacific American Democratic Caucus dinner, and I got to hear 3 fabulous speakers on their different routes to being public servants. Betty Yee, Sheng Tao from First Hmong in the city council, and I can't remember her name, the first Afghan woman elected to, yes, from Hayward City Council. So fabulous stories. It's just good to see that women really are from diverse backgrounds are stepping up, and thank God. So, and then went to the City of Richmond liaison with Director Coffey and our staff. Our staff is very well represented, and they presented very well. I think the City of Richmond is a good partner.
Solid.
Yeah, especially with this Point Mulani. And then the 75th anniversary of the 442 Regiment was very nice. I was glad to see it. Who knows? There's only 3 left, I think.
Oh.
There was a lot more. There was another event in Hawaii for the members that couldn't make it to this one. And then they're making their. I think Mr. Sakai was going to France. I think they had just had it for their 75th anniversary of yeah, and so they were honored there. In fact, they're considered saviors of that town in southern France. And also, one thing I found out from attending the 442 was that that unit. They lost 800 members to save 200 members of a lost battalion from Texas, and that unit was the 442 was honorary citizens of the city of Texas, but they did lose 800 of their members in saving that other unit. So very sad, but I was glad I went, and was a pleasure to meet Martin Snap, too, a longtime columnist for the Oakland Tribune. And then also, I met with a constituent, John Nichols, at Redwood, and he gave me the download on everything that's wrong with that display at the Redwood Pavilion. So I will send that on to Dr. Z. Yeah. And then what's brewing in the parks at Lake Chabot was fabulous. I was actually surprised how many people showed up, considering the Warriors game was going on. Yeah.
I did hear that it was cold.
And then I went to a ribbon cutting this last Sunday at the Wilder Art and Garden Center from City of Orinda. Fabulous new community center, and smack in the dab of all these magnificent play fields and backdrop of the ridge and fog coming through, and nice place. But they were very, very, very cognizant that Measure WW helped get there, and everyone was very enthusiastic about their new. It'd be a good place to have a meeting, actually. Oh yeah. And then yesterday went to the Special Districts Forum Appreciation little deal at the. More free beer and free food this time at Drake's in San Leandro. Very nice. Once again, I just wanted to thank everyone that was involved. That was a wonderful, wonderful effort. A lot of work, and it continues. And they put on another event. Mary, thank you so much for all your work, and everybody was just, as we know from people that attended. The feedback from everybody that went was fabulous. I just wanted to thank that.
And if I may, Director Rosario.
Yes.
Director Lane, we need to acknowledge your initiative at the Special Parks District Forum to bring in the opportunity for some of the visitors to understand our partnership with National Park Services. And I thank you so much. I truly enjoyed attending your tours. Great.
I'm glad that worked out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then just as a general comment, I just wanted to thank Kim Anderson, ASME 2428, for clarification on the stance of 2428 regarding the bridge yard. And also, I just wanted to comment on one of the public speakers from 2428 was that, the class and comp study, there's always huge expectations whenever we do those. And it's always difficult when some of those expectations aren't met. And it's always, having gone through 3 of those now, the main attempt is, those class and comp studies, is to identify who's being left out, who's really being left behind, and then the attempt is to bring those people up. And then in succeeding negotiations, you try to bring everybody else up. So I think for those people that were expecting something higher than what was brought forward by the data, it's those how somehow the chips fall that way. So I think good luck in bringing up for your union's discussions and getting the most people to the middle. And hopefully you have another opportunity in negotiations next time, so in 2020, very shortly. So
3 times you've been through this.
yes, the
My
first
goodness.
time, I can't remember what year it was, but the union was responsible for dishing out the money. Very difficult. It's very similar. A lot of people had expectations, and only a few people got bumped up because they were really far behind. So it's hard.
It's hard.
It's hard.
Always hard.
Always hard.
Negotiations of any type are always
Yeah.
hard. I was sorry to miss the event. I always enjoy with all of our volunteers, but I was on the edge of bronchitis, and I've been there when I thought you were going to freeze to death, so I was not about to take my bronchial system out. But I've run into 2 volunteers since then who thanked me for the event, and I said, well, I'm sorry I missed it, and I know you had a good time, and you had just terrific food with all of the managers, so they really do appreciate it. I attended the finance meeting, the State of the City of Livermore addressed by our mayor. We had a special LAFCO meeting where we came to an agreement with the county on continuing with them as a special agency. A really fun event, if you ever get a chance to go to it, is the Hero event in the wonderful city of Sunol, one of my favorite places. I don't know how many of you know Ario Isit, but he's Mr. Sunol. We had a wonderful representation of our police horses. Anything more popular than horses, I don't know what it is. And then we also had our lifeguard unit there, and they were having the little kids try on various sized vests and showing them the parents, how to do it properly so they were the right size. And a lot of parents were surprised that we had them free at places like Shadow Cliff. So it was very informative. I suggested that they work with one of my favorite people, Ben Yee, and try to get some people there from hospitals, whether it's Kaiser or Washington, and talk about safety things that are good for the kids. And I think Ario, you know Ario and Ben, they're probably going to make it happen. And I ate junk food, a very uninspiring hamburger with French's mustard on it, a bag of Fritos, and then he said, how about an ice cream bar? And I said, by then, why not? Decadence. And they have a great garden too, if you get a chance to go see it, complete with chickens. Coyote Hills, the festival was wonderful. Staff did a great job. I went on the bird walk, and we got to see a whole, is it a flock, a covey, whatever, of white pelicans that had found thermals, and they were just circling around. So everybody did a great job, as always. It's a fun event. And I do plan to attend, and I think maybe Director Corbett's going to the Fremont Library this next week to see the state of the county, Haggerty and Miley, so we'll see what's going on there. Is there anything anybody would like? And I want to congratulate Mona again for all she does, helping so many people have such a good time and get introduced to new food. Maybe we'll bring junk food sometime. They probably know about that already, though. Okay. So is there anyone who has anything to add? Yes.
That is, thank you to staff for the Measure WW local grant, which is called Local Investments.
I like that.
Here, because it will be very useful as we talk to our city constituents, for them to see how much we have supported in local recreation. So.
And I want to add, and whether I have any influence or not on the calendar for next year, I think this is an absolutely stunning photograph. And I love the owl from last month. I'm getting a copy of that one. So I want to be very appreciative of all those photographers who provide these wonderful views of our park, and I'm sure you all feel the same. So with that, we stand adjourned.